Hey everyone, Senpai Talks here, and in today's video, we're going to be going over the most hyped arc in all of Demon Slayer. This arc starts off in one of the literally most insane ways, and constantly blew me away, thinking that it possibly couldn't ascend to an even higher degree of just god-tier story. But it fantastically somehow did this thing that constantly had me scrolling through page upon page, and chapter upon chapter was nothing else than the one and only Infinity Castle arc of the beautiful Demon Slayer story. So without any further delay, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a like on the video, as it really goes to show that you are really loving these Demon Slayer Explained videos. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get into part 1 of the final arc of Kimetsu no Yaiba. Muzan Kibitsuji, a demon the Ubiratsuki family and the Demon Slayers had been chasing for 1,000 years, has finally come. Kyugaya, who is now completely unable to see because of his illnesses, asks his wife, Amane, for his descriptions. Muzan, on the other hand, mocked him, as he who they have been chasing showed no signs of aging, while Kyugaya, on the other hand, is already smelling like a corpse. It was then revealed that Muzan and Kyugaya are actually from the same family, which led to the Ubuyashiki family being cursed, where every child born will be weak and die right away. In order for their family to not die out, the Ubuyashiki family dedicated themselves in defeating Muzan, and have received wives from the priests for generations, which made them resilient. But nobody in their family was able to live beyond the age of 30 years old. Upon hearing this, Muzan ridiculed him, as even with all their efforts, and even with the 1,000s of people killed by Muzan, he has never been punished. Kyugaya, however, questions him about his dreams, which make Muzan uncomfortable, who also notes that there are only 4 humans present in the mansion: Kyugaya, his wife, and 2 children who are currently playing nearby. Muzan's dream is to be indestructible, and it will come true once he gets his hands on Nezuko. But Kyugaya was able to turn the ridicule on Muzan and his dream, stating that it will not come true. He continues recalling how the demon hunters still exist and have existed and never died out for over 1,000 years. Kyugaya tells Muzan that he's going to prove to him that human thoughts are indestructible, and the thought of never forgiving those who have taken the lives of people's loved ones away senselessly is eternal, telling him that not once has he ever been forgiven over the past 1,000 years. He always proceeded to step on the tiger's tail, constantly, finally now incurring the wrath of the dragon he has just awoken, further noting that even if he dies, the hunters will not feel any pain, as they do not need him that much. The connection to human thought is something that demons cannot understand, because they will cease to exist once Muzan dies. Upon hearing this, Muzan becomes enraged, and appearing in front of Kyugaya, he demands him to be quiet, in which Kyugaya retorts, instead thanking him. As Muzan goes to grab Kyugaya, it flashes away to a nearby crow rocketing through the forest and informing the Hashiras along with the demon hunters of the attack on the Ubuyashiki estate. In a previous Hashira meeting, Tsunemi draws attention to the problem of Kyugaya being unguarded, believing 2 Hashiras and the least need to be protecting him. He and the others ask Gyome if something can be done to change this problem. Gyome, having known Kyugaya the longest, only responds that he had been asking the same question for 8 years, and Kyugaya had always denied his protection. He insisted someone like the Hashira shouldn't be wasted on someone like himself, worrying them. Shinobu adds that she heard the Ubuyashikis had never had a bodyguard of sorts throughout their history. Back in the action, Tsunemi hurries through the forest towards the Ubuyashiki estate, and as he catches sight of the mansion, a massive explosion destroys the mountainside. To Tsunemi's sheer horror, the explosion is noticed by the rest of the Hashira, horrifying them all. Tanjiro realizes the sense of blood and burning flesh is in the air. Muzan, caught directly by the explosion, tries to regenerate and curses Kyugaya in his final moments. Kyugaya had the smile of a Buddha, before killing himself alongside his wives and 2 daughters. The Demon Lord never believed he was capable of such commitment towards killing him, and underestimated him, adding he knew Kyugaya had planned something, but nothing at this scale. He notices Kyugaya even added spikes to the explosions to delay his regeneration even further. Muzan senses that Kyugaya has something else planned, knowing people and most likely his shares must be close by. He thinks back to the Oyukata's final moments. He had hid all his anger and bloodlust without Muzan even noticing, something he begrudgingly commends him for. 4. As Muzan tries to put his mind towards regenerating quicker, flesh seeds appear around him. Without warning, they burst into gigantic black branches. He realizes that there must be some sort of blood demon art, but is completely immobilized. The spikes don't harm him, however, and Muzan believes he can simply absorb them to escape out of there. Out of nowhere, though, Tamyu appears and stabs her hand through Muzan's stomach. Muzan is angered at her sudden appearance and asks her reason. Tamyu mentions the flesh seeds belong to the man in Asakusa. He turned into a demon. He realizes she must have hidden herself with another blood demon art using Ushiro as talismans. She tells Muzan the drug in her fist, absorbed by him, turns demons back to humans, though Muzan claims that it's impossible, but she states it became possible with someone's help. Muzan curses her stubbornness and makes the claim that her hatred of him is unjust. He reminds her that she alone was responsible for the death of her family. She tearfully responds all she wanted was to survive her disease and see her children grow up. But the demon lord mentioned she had eaten other people after that, and states that she had fun doing so. Tamio doesn't deny that fact, and states that in order to atone for those deaths she and Muzan will die together. Tamio calls out to Gyome, the first to arrive at the scene, and with a single swing of his spiked flail, he decapitates Muzan. At the young age of just 23, Kyugaya Ubuyashiki is confirmed to be dead. Before his death, he spent every day visiting the graves of fallen demon slayers till his affliction finally prevented him from doing so. Gyomi recalls the first time he met Kyugaya when Oyukata was 14 and he himself was only 18. Immediately, Kyugaya knew that Gyome had protected the children he was accused of killing. Gyome remembers even back then, Kyugaya spoke in a way that people wanted to hear, and his sullenness remained till his last moments. During the last time he personally spoke with the stone Hashira, Kyugaya predicts that Muzan Kibitsuji will come within 5 days, instructing Gyome to decapitate him as Kyugaya acts as the decoy himself. It is then revealed that the Ubuyashiki's family's way, with foresight and instinct, was unmatched, using their power to protect themselves from disasters. Kyugaya knows the other Hashiras will not accept his decision of self-sacrifice, and asks the Hashira he has known the longest to carry out his wish. Gyome manages to successfully behead Muzan, assisted by Tamio, keeping the demon still, as Kyugaya had predicted. Muzan regenerates his head, completely unsurprising to Gyome. He recalls his late leader's words that sunlight is the only way to kill the demon lord, and he resolves to keep him restrained till dawn. Muzan attempts to ensnare the Hashira with blood demon art, black blood brambles, but the attack is only deflected by Gyome's stone breathing, third form, stone skin. Sonemi arrives and angrily asks what has become of Kyugaya. The rest of the Hashira then arrive, asking each other about their leader's state. Gyome announces that they are now facing Muzan himself, to the shock of all the Hashira, as none of them have ever directly encountered him. Tanjiro, the only one present who has personally faced him, angrily calls out to him. All of the remaining Hashiras use their respective breath techniques in order to cut Muzan down. As they converge on the demon, Muzan laughs to himself. Giant doors suddenly appear and slide open under the demon slayers, causing them all to plummet into the Infinity Castle, and he declares that he will kill them all tonight. Tanjiro responds back, though, that the only one who is going to die will be Muzan. Muzan answers his challenge, telling him to do it if he can. As Tanjiro falls, he is caught by Gyu and thrown onto a nearby platform to safety. The two are suddenly attacked by numerous demons, but quickly kill them all, using the water-breathing, sixth form, Whirlpool, and water-breathing third form, Flowing Dance, respectively. Tanjiro comments on how amazing Gyu is internally, noting how he can accurately predict the type of form he would use through slight movements, all the while staying unnerved. The two then head out further into the castle. Ibuno rescues Mitsuri from several demons using serpent-breathing, fifth form, Slithering Serpent, much to her exuberant gratitude. Gyome and Michiro rush throughout the castle, slaughtering demons. They note all the demons they encounter are roughly the strength of a lower moon, suggesting Muzan intends to wear them down. The two lament the loss of Kyugaya Ubuyashiki. Michiro remembers Temio was near death from attacks, and Kyugaya encouraging him to continue. Kyugaya did so with all the injured demon slayers in a fatherly manner. Michiro seethes with rage that Muzan had killed his twin and his second father, and hopes to bring him to hell. Something the normally calm Guillaume furiously hopes to do also. Tsunami laments his inability to protect Kigaya. When demons appear before him, he rapidly slaughters them all. Inosuke is excited, falling into the Infinity Castle, eager to test his abilities on numerous demons. Zenitsu hears something nearby and believes a particular someone is close, calling them unforgivable. Shinobu smells some blood and decides to open up a nearby door. Inside the room are numerous corpses of women and a demon standing there as Shinobu remembers Kane Kocho's death. She is seen crying, and Kane tells her to quit the Demon's Lair core. She tells her to gain the happiness of a normal girl and to live until she became old. Shinobu desperately asks her sister about the demon that attacked her, stating that she cannot live a normal life like this. Sadly, the flashback ends with Shinobu recalling that it was a demon that looked like blood was dumped all over his head as she witnesses a demon devour his victims while surrounded by female corpses strewn about. The demon smiles and takes off his crown, introducing himself as Doma. Shinobu recalls her sister's words that the demon would laugh in a carefree manner and would talk softly. One of Doma's victims reaches out desperately for help, only to be told by Doma to be quiet as he was in the middle of talking. However, Shinobu carries her away from Doma and sweetly asks whether she is all right, to which Doma asks whether she was a Hashira due to her speed. Just as the victim attempts to reply to Shinobu, she is murdered by Doma's attacks. Doma smiles and tells her to leave the body there, stating that he will eat it later. Shinobu remembers what her sister had stated. The demon's weapons were a pair of sharp fans. The demon then explains that he was the leader of the Eternal Paradise faith, claiming that it was his duty to be happy with himself and his followers. But Shinobu tells Doma disgustedly that the girl he had killed was clearly in pain and begging for help. To this, he responds that he had saved the girl, claiming that she no longer feels pain, suffering, or fear. Doma then goes on to say that everyone fears death, which is why he eats his followers for their sake, so that they can live forever with him. He claims that he takes his followers' hopes, blood, and flesh to heart, and leads them to a higher salvation. But Shinobu angrily spits that he couldn't possibly be sane, and asks whether he's all right in the head, telling him that he makes her want to vomit. Doma gives a surprised expression, noting that she has been rather harsh for their first meeting. He then realizes that Shinobu must have been through something quite difficult, pitying her and suggesting he listens to what she has to say about it. Shinobi angrily clutches her Hayori and growls that Doma was the one who had killed her sister, fearingly demanding if he has no memories of this specific Hayori. Doma then recalls Kane as the girl who used the flower breathing, stating his regrets over not being able to eat her before sunrise. Shinobu cuts him off the strike to his eye with her insect-breathing dance of the bee-sting truth flutter. Doma compliments that it was so fast he couldn't prevent it with his hand. He then unleashes his demon art Frozen Lotus, and Shinobu backflips and dodges. However, she inhales some of the ice powder that he had scattered about. Doma compliments that she was fast, but he states that she wouldn't be able to kill a demon with stabs, and the slicing of the neck was the best option to go with. To this, Shinobu responds that if a stab wound didn't kill him, poison would. Just as the wisteria poison goes into effect, he falls onto the floor and hacks up blood, telling Shinobu that this poison was much stronger than the one she had used at the mountain, saying that Muzan had warned her that she changes her poisons for every demon she faces. Doma quickly breaks down the poison, widely grinning, as he apologizes that he has broken down the poison, even though she had gone to the effort to use it on him. He comments that Shinobu katanas made a distinctive sound whenever she seethes her. He wonders aloud if that's how she changes the concentration of the poison. He clasps his hands together and joyfully exclaims how it was fun and interesting to get poisoned, and how it may become a sort of habit. He asks Shinobu whether she thinks the next poison formulation would work, excitedly asking for her to try it out. Shinobu notes, though, that it was already speculated beforehand that he would most likely be able to break down the poison. Doma recalls his past and his childhood. Born with rainbow-colored eyes and white hair, he was believed to be special and connected to God. His parents, whom he considered stupid, arranged a cult with him at the head called the Eternal Paradise Cult. Worshippers flocked to Doma to repent their issues and problems in life, hoping for advice. Doma, however, had no feelings and found it problematic that adults had sought wisdom from a child. When they begged him to guide them to paradise, he cried, believing paradise gods and Buddhas was all a fairy tale that never even existed. Confused why people wouldn't believe that they were all just destined to die and rot. Doma believed that it was his duty to make these people happy. Doma then notices a 5th slash on his hand and heals himself of shinobu poisoning, asking if she is okay now that she has started to breathe heavily. Shinobu realizes the true strength of the upper rank, noting Doma's resistance and the inability of the poisons to work on him. Doma notes Shinobu's lungs must be destroyed, having taken a blow of his blood demon technique. She realizes the fog of his frozen blood is hazardous if breathed in, and decided to use multiple blows to poison him again, using her insect-breathing Dance of the Dragonfly Compound Eye. Shinobu rushes forward and stabs Doma. Doma states that he believes the insect to share her might be the fastest one, but as she backs away, Shinobu bleeds profusely, realizing she herself was also hit in return. Doma taunts her, mentioning that she could have easily cut off his head with her immense speed, but can't due to her small frame. As blood falls on her hands, she remembers how small they actually are. Remembering that she had never grown any taller in her childhood, she laments she could have killed demons the usual way if she had grown more. Shinobu knows larger hands and legs meant more muscle, and that was a distinctive advantage. She recalls Kane was able to do so despite only being slightly taller and also with a dainty and thin frame. She remembers Kane's last moments with her telling her that she would likely lose to Doma. Kane's spirit suddenly appears before the injured Shinobu, telling her to stand. Shinobu believes that she can no longer, though heavily bleeding and with her left lung shredded by Doma's fog, she can't breathe normally as well. Kane declares that irrelevant, and states that she will win with the right resolve to kill him, no matter the sacrifice, noting that she promised her and Kano, remembering their younger sister. Shinobu crouches down while Doma approaches her, noting the slash he gave her was only half-hearted, but it must be painful for her. Kane urges her younger sister to keep trying, causing her to stand, which shocks the upper moon as she stares at Doma. Shinobu starts to cough up blood, prompting Doma to laugh that the blood in her lungs is causing her to do so, resolving to end her pain. He tells her to give up, saying she is already beyond saving. Shinobu takes a stance, and using her insect-breathing dance of the centipede, 100-legged zigzag, she speeds towards the upper-ranked demon. Doma becomes shocked at this feat, noting the destroyed bridge from the impact of her feat's force. Doma tries to slash her back, but is just too slow, only managing to hit her cape. Shinobu crouches down and launches into the air, driving her sword through Doma's neck and forcing his body into the ceiling in one final thrust. Shinobu remembers her childhood, believing that happiness was an endless road throughout life. That belief, though, was shattered when a demon entered her home and killed both of her parents, leaving her and Kane orphaned. They were saved, however, by Gyome, who quickly defeated the killer. Shinobu realized that her happiness was forever destroyed, other people's wound, and resolved to defeat demons and prevent other people from suffering the same fate as her. Shinobu and Kane promised to each other to both become demon slayers. To do so, the two believe that, despite their weak strength, stopping one demon could save tens of people, and stopping an upper rank could save hundreds. Recalling the time that Tanjiro asks if she was angry, she states that she has been angry for a long time, remembering her parents' death, her sisters, and those of all of her successors. She remembers Aoi, Sumi, Kyo, and Naho, and how their families were killed also. Most of all, she's incensed at her poison's inability to hurt Doma. Her sword slips from Doma's neck, causing her to fall. Doma, however, uses his ice to catch her and pull Shinobu into a hug. The demon tearfully congratulates her for making it thus far, while mocking her for being weak and less talented than Kane. To her fury, Doma acknowledges her foolishness at trying to kill him despite all of the odds, and calls it the thing that makes humans so fleeting. As he decides she is finally worthy of being eaten by him, Doma asks her for her final words, in which Shinobu responds, telling him to go to hell. Konoha opens up the door of the cult room and looks up to see Doma clutching Shinobu near the roof, as she watches Doma break Shinobu's body in his arms to Konoha's horror, killing her and causing
her sword to fall from her hand. Kanawa desperately leaps upwards to use flower-breathing fourth form, Crimson Hanagoromo, but misses when Doma escapes and lands onto the floor. The demon advises her not to attack him. In the middle of absorbing someone, causing Kanawa to seethe with rage, Doma fails to taunt her and instead fondly recalls that Shinobu only had a short time with him due to his abilities, and decides that this night might be really good having two gorgeous meals at once, all while licking Shinobu hairpin. Zenitsu approaches a room and calls for the being inside to come out. They only respond that Zenitsu's beckoning is the improper address to a senior. Kayagaku walks out and taunts him for being as dainty and as seedy as ever. Zenitsu responds back, however, that as a demon, Kayagaku is no longer his senior. As Tanjiro and Giyu continue through the castle, the former nearly falls through an open floor, commenting that the building is seemingly trying to separate the two while wondering how long Tamayu can withstand Muzan. And unsure of their exact location, a Kasagaya crow announces that Shinobu Kocho has encountered and was killed by the upper rank 2. While Tanjiro holds back tears, Giyu notices that the crow has a piece of paper on its neck. In the new Demon Slayer's headquarters, Kiryu Yubashiki has become the new head of the organization, as the only remaining male doing so. At the age of only 8, he is supported by his sisters, Kuwana and Kanata. Despite the deaths of his parents and 2 elder sisters, he willingly hasn't grieved them in order to focus on the mission. Kuwana and Kanata also hold back their emotions to also aid him. Their father, with his short lifespan, was strict, raising them quickly into adults as quickly as he could. Their elder sisters, Hinaka and Ichika, had never left their father or mother's side. Their mother was also kind but strict in raising them. The 3 each have one of Yushiro's talismans, helping them map out the Infinity Castle. Kiryu notices the lacking information they need and suggests telling the crows to spread as many eyes as they can. Kuwanai decides Muzan hasn't left from his place and instructs Kiryu into guiding them north to face him. She mentions the only demons that is currently facing upper moon demons are Kanawa and Zenitsu, the latter now facing the new upper rank 6. Zenitsu and Kayagaku face off, mocking Zenitsu as puny and weak, scoffing at his status as a Hashira, since he is only able to do one form. Zenitsu retaliates, though, by mentioning how happy his former superior seems as the bottom-up rank, leaving Kayagaku stunned at his barbed comment. Zenitsu questions him on how he could have turned into a demon, but when Kayagaku tries to answer, Zenitsu cuts him off and continues saying, "Why would someone pose to acquire thunder-breathing become a demon?" Zenitsu angrily yells that Jigoto had committed seppuku by himself upon hearing what Kayagaku had done. And Zenitsu gets angered, telling him that someone was actually meant to assist them at that act, but instead he died an agonizing death all alone, all because a user of their thunder-breathing became a demon. Kayagaku scoffs at the news and asks him if he's meant to be sad or repent, unapologetically refusing to care. He declares he will always stick to those who value him. He states he is glad Jigoto died a painful death, angered at all his efforts to please him never led to him being named his successor, and insults him further by scoffing at his idea of sharing the successorship with dirt and calling the former Hashira senile. Zenitsu furiously tells him that if he was dirt, Kayagaku was garbage, since he can only use the first breath and Kayagaku never managed to learn it at all, commenting that Jigoto only died a miserable death because he wasn't lucky enough to have a true successor. Kayagaku angrily tells Zenitsu, though, not to lump him in with the likes of himself and unleashes the thunder-breathing fourth form, Distant Thunder, sending lightning at the Demon Slayer. However, Zenitsu had already avoided the attack and slashed the demon's neck, mocking him, telling him that he is too slow and that he was filth. leaving Kayagaku stunned, wondering why his opponent seems like a completely different person. Kayagaku then remembers his unfortunate encounter with the upper rank 1, Kokushibo. He comments it isn't shameful to kneel before an overwhelmingly powerful foe, recalling when he quickly surrendered to the demon. He believes as long as he is alive, he can always do something, even if he has to scrape his head on the ground, drink dirty water, or steal to survive. In a flashback, we see that Kokushibo offers a portion of Muzan's blood from him if he wants to become more powerful. And if Muzan accepts him, he can take a place among the upper ranks. Kokushibo advises him that it takes time to become a powerful demon, as powerful as a strong swordsman. And at that he gives Kayagaku a large amount of blood, since he is also a breath user. He tells Kayagaku to be thankful for the blood he has given, but threatens to behead him should he spill a drop. At that time his whole body was terrified, but his transformation, but now facing Zenitsu, Kayagaku's fear is a non-existent. He is assured no matter how powerful he is, Zenitsu cannot beat an upper rank, declaring everybody has to die eventually, and saying Jigoro and Tsunetsu are no exception. Kayagaku uses Thunder-Breathing's second form, Rice Spirit, to kill him. Zenitsu takes notice of his 5 simultaneous attacks, deducing he must have eaten numerous people already. He asks the demon if he knows right from wrong, but Kayagaku responds that those who accept him are right and those who don't are wrong, as he uses the Thunder-Breathing third form, Thunderstorm. He then uses Thunder-Breathing fifth form, Hate Lightning, hitting Zenitsu and burning him as he asks his former swordsman how he likes his newfound demon-enhanced forms. Kayagaku follows up with more Thunder-Breathing sixth form, Rumble and Flash, hitting him again with numerous slashes as Zenitsu falls after being hit. He remembers back to his days training alongside Kayagaku. Ironically, Zenitsu only managed to do the first form. Kayagaku was able to do all of them but the first of the Thunder-Breathing techniques. Zenitsu knew deep down that Kayagaku was never going to be a Hashira. One day, Zenitsu had hit a senior demon slayer and Kayagaku reprimanded him, then mocked him for doing so. He knew Kayagaku virulently hated him. Zenitsu himself also hated Kayagaku greatly, but despite this, he genuinely respected Kayagaku for his work ethic and drive, and despite his place, especially with Jigoro's students, it never satisfied him. Finally, he considered Kayagaku's feelings like a box of happiness in his heart. His happiness always leaked through, and he must always close that box to feel satisfied. Apologizing to Jigoro and Kayagaku, Zenitsu lands on the wall and stops his fall. As a confused Kayagaku looks on, Zenitsu uses his Thunder-Breathing seventh form, Hono Ikazuchi no Kami, and speeds upward, decapitating Kayagaku. In that moment, as the upper-rank demon becomes enraged that he never saw it coming, he curses his former master for teaching Zenitsu something he never knew and playing favorites. Zenitsu replies, though, that Jigoro was never such a person, and that he actually created this form for the day that he would fight alongside him. After Zenitsu beheads Kayagaku, they both fall in the Infinity Castle to their deaths. Zenitsu plummets unconsciously as the disintegrating Kayagaku grows furious from his defeat at Zenitsu's hands. He comforts himself with the idea that Zenitsu will die with him when they hit the floor, until Yushiro comes to save Zenitsu while coldly reminding Kayagaku that without friends, he will end with nothing, since he gave nothing to anyone, finally commenting that dying alone sure is pathetic. As Zenitsu awakens in a land full of red spider lilies and sees his master Jigono across a river that separates the two, Zenitsu breaks down in front of him, crying in remorse and regret for not being able to save Kayagaku and being unable to become a Hashira prior to his death. As Zenitsu struggles with being caught by the lilies, he realizes that Jigoro hasn't said anything to him, and Jigoro breaks his silence by calling out Zenitsu's name, and with tearful eyes he proclaims that Zenitsu is his pride and joy. In reality, Zenitsu is being patched up by Yoshiro while being guarded by Murata and another demon slayer. Murata realizes he remembers Zenitsu and calls out, hoping for survival, leading Yoshiro to tell him to shut up. As Murata angrily comments back that he cannot be treated like this as a demon slayer of rank, Yoshiro responds back as a demon. He ignores them as he patches Zenitsu's eyes, and Murata shouts at the demon that the blood from Zenitsu's wounds continues to bleed. Yoshiro tells Zenitsu he was lucky Kaibaku was inexperienced with his demon powers, and that if he had fought him a year later, he would have ended up dead for sure. Murata yells not to be so negative, attracting demons to their location. To the others' dismay, Yoshida was brought along by Tamio to assist the demon slayers, much to his frustration. Despite the fact that he wore the demon slayer's uniform to enter, no one even recognized him. The other members knew something was off, but the fact that he was a demon created by Utamio went unknown. Shiro grows frustrated at Murata's inability to behead the attacking demon and places Zenitsu in a safe spot to assist. Meanwhile, Tanjiro and Gyu are continuing to run throughout the castle. He tells Shinobu that they will win, and that he is sure of that. Suddenly, a powerful tremor strikes,
shaking the area and worrying the two water breathers. As Tanjiro wonders if it is a fight or someone's death, the tremor gets closer and stronger. Gyu tells Tanjiro to stay back,
as the source of the tremor punches through the ceiling, revealing the source of the noise to be. Yakuza Akaza tells the demon slayers, "Long time no see. I'm surprised a weakling like you is still alive, Tanjiro Kamado," causing Tanjiro to yell his opponent's name. Back elsewhere, we see that Tamayo is trapped in a flesh cocoon made by Muzan, slowly being absorbed, and all the while she desperately pleads for help. While in the process of mapping out the floor of the Infinity Castle, Kunai begins to envision the recently deceased members of her family. Her emotions begin to overwhelm her, and her eyes well up with tears, but her brother Kadia reassures her to stay strong in order to win the battle. After the small delay, she recomposes herself and continues to map out the floor plan. Sitting outside of the room are former Hashira Tengen and Shinjuro standing guard. They begin conversating at how mature and wise Kirya has become, despite losing his father at such a young age. Shinjuro mentions how the youth are risking their lives, and how he had decided to follow his late son Kyojiro and put his life on the line to protect them. Elsewhere on the estate, Sakonji is seen caring to an eld Nezuko. He reveals that he had given Nezuko a medication that would revert her back to a human, but questioned if it was actually taking any effect. The idea of Nezuko returning to a human would ruin Muzanshim of trying to conquer the sun, and she would be deemed the only demon in history not to be destroyed by sunlight. Sakonji begins to tremble at the idea of the conflict ending on that night and being alive to witness it. He reminisces on the day when he first met Tanjiro and how he felt that the beginning of the end had finally come. He quietly begins to root for Tanjiro and Nezuko, begging them not to lose. Meanwhile, within the castle, Tanjiro has begun to engage Akaza in a fight, whom lunges forward to forcefully attack first. Tanjiro is narrowly able to escape the blow by using Hinokami Kagura Firewheel to whip over Akaza, now behind him. Tanjiro wills himself to slice Akaza's arm off and successfully manages to do so, but it swiftly attacks when Akaza manages to regenerate his arm to his advantage. Tanjiro narrowly avoids his attack by using Hinokami Kagura Fake Rainbow and slices Akaza across the face. In the process, Akaza regenerates his cut while he stares stunned at Tanjiro's ability. After having witnessed their small scuffle, Yu stands amazed at Tanjiro's techniques, thinking of how his ability is equal to that of a Hashira's. He recalls the snow day of when they first met and how all he could do was beg for his sister's life, compared to how he can now fight without losing his life or dignity. Akaza recalls the final words spoken to him by Kyojiro, "This boy isn't weak, and do not insult him," and acknowledges Tanjiro's strength and informs him of his newfound respect for him. Akaza then begins initiating his technique development to fight Tanjiro in a serious manner. Yiyu uses water-breathing, third form, flowing dance, to maneuver around Akaza, the latter recognizing him as the water Hashira and stating it has been 50 years since he last faced a Hashira that uses the water-breathing. Akaza responds by using destructive death disorder, disrupting Yiyu's movement and forcing him to use the water-breathing 11th form, dead calm, to negate the attack. The Upper Moon mentions the last water Hashira he faced never used such a form. Tanjiro appears from behind, using Hinokami Kagura Raging Sun to slash at Akaza's neck, only for the blow to miss and for the demon to appear behind him instead. About to punch through his neck, Tanjiro nearly gets hit trying to use the Hinokami Kagura fake rainbow to dodge, when Yiyu saves him by slicing off Ikaza's arm using water-breathing, second form, water wheel. Ikaza's arm grows back nearly instantly, however, and Yiyu quickly attacks again, followed by Tanjiro using Hinokami Kagura Flame Dance. Akaza sees him trying to slice his foot and use his leg-type crouch splitter, knocking the demon slayers. Tanjiro tries to parry with his blade, and though he nearly comes out unscathed, Akaza's leg catches Tanjiro's nose slightly, causing him to bleed heavily from the sheer force. Tanjiro crouches down to soak up the pain, leading Yiyu to face Akaza alone. Akaza compliments his opponent's sword and asks for his name, only to be denied as Yiyu tells him that he does not have a name to tell the demon and that he hates talking, so do not bother. The demon happily responds and will continually ask him until he gives in, using leg-type explosive flurry to hit his blade handle, knocking the Hashira away through several walls. Tanjiro sees the impact and calls out to Yiyu, only for Akaza to appear alongside him, excited now that he knows the opponent's name. The two swing at each other, and Tanjiro uses Hinokami Kagura Burning Bone Summer, and Akaza deploying his destructive Death 8-layered Demon Core in retaliation. Akaza survives the clash unscathed, while Tanjiro is forced back, slamming into the wall. Akaza compliments his moves and for training so much in a short period. He praises Kyojiro Rengoku for the day of their battle, as Tanjiro was a weakling lying down that night. Now, however, he sees Tanjiro's growth in battle and is now excited to face him. Akaza voices his gratitude at Kyojiro's death, as he believes he would never have become stronger than that day, also insulting his belief to remain human. Tanjiro hears these words, and remembering Kyojiro, Shinjuro, and Senjuro, he becomes enraged, telling him to stop insulting the former Flame Hashira. Akaza is confused, retorting he is praising the two, while Tanjiro only tells him that he is insulting Kyojiro as well as hating anyone who faces him. The demon claims Tanjiro is at a misunderstanding, as he only hates the weak, as he states that the laws of nature dictate the weak to be eliminated. The demon slayer responds back that the upper rank himself is the product of his wrong views, as he himself was once weak as well and had become powerful. Tanjiro yells that the strong protect the weak, then the weak get stronger and help those weaker than themselves, calling it the true laws of nature. He calls Akaza's beliefs unforgivable and voices that he will not let him do as he likes any further. Facing off against Tanjiro, Akaza cannot brush aside this unpleasant feeling he is giving him. He is unsure why he feels angry fighting him, since he believes Tanjiro is no longer weak, but cannot shake the feeling of his eyes, voice, and words cutting into him. At that moment, someone grabs Akaza's shoulder and confirms Tanjiro's words. Everyone starts off weak. They get help from everyone around them, but he should only compare his own progress against himself, not that of others. The man tells him that the only thing important is becoming stronger than he was yesterday, and soon he can be the one to help people. Angered, Akaza tries to punch behind him to hit the man, but strikes nothing as a bewildered Tanjiro sees Akaza punch the air suddenly. Akaza angrily mutters, "Tanjiro, you really are extremely unpleasant." Akaza uses destructive death-crushing type 10,000 leaves flashing willow and ruptures the ground around him, with Tanjiro just barely dodging the attack as he becomes stunned at Akaza's new speed. The demon then quickly engages the demon slayer from below and uses his destructive death leg-type flying planet 1,000 wheels, with Tanjiro taking the attack and vomiting as a result. He tries to reason as to how Akaza manages to nearly hit him with every move. All his strikes seem to aim at his vital areas, and his attacks seem to be attracted to them. He thinks back to when the demon deployed his technique deployment compass needle. But before he can figure it out, Tanjiro dodges to the side to escape an oncoming kick. Tanjiro uses the Hinokami Kagura solar heat haze, but only manages to cut halfway through Akaza's neck, who manages to heal the cut instantly, however. The Upper Moon is curious as to how the tip manages to appear hazy before hitting him, asking the Demon Slayer how he did it. Elsewhere, Senjuro prays for his late brother Kyojiro that a major part of the battle is now active, pleading for him to protect Tanjiro in spirit. Senjuro thinks to his written letter to Tanjiro about the conversation between the sun-breathing swordsman and the flame Hashira of that time, and how the swordsman was the first breather user and had engaged Muzan in battle. As Senjuro continues to pray for his brother and that Tanjiro will survive, it is revealed that the Kaseki Crow with his letter is sitting nearby watching the battle, forcing Tanjiro to survive the battle in order to read it. As Tanjiro attempts to use his Hinokami Kagura fire wheel, Akaza catches the blade in his hands, startled that he will attempt to break it. Tanjiro instantly headbutts the demon, but doesn't injure Ikaza at all. He attempts to kick him, but Akaza continues to grasp the sword. Suddenly, Akaza's arms are sliced off, freeing Tanjiro and his sword, as Yiyu returns, stating that he's angered at the searing pain in his back, and sarcastically thanking the Upper Moon for blasting him through several walls. As Yiyu and Akaza face each other, Yiyu comments on the reason he fights. He doesn't want to battle to the best of his ability, and he doesn't like battles where his opponents continually swing for fun. But now he had never faced someone who overwhelmed him with his first clash. Yiyu states that Akaza's senses are all finely tuned and polished. His own senses are now switched on to a state where only the strong battle, as he finally understands here that the moments of life in a battle truly test someone's abilities. Yiyu watches as Yu unlocks his Demon Slayer mark. Yu rushes towards and swings the blade, just missing Akaza's neck. Akaza tries to punch his head off,
but the Hashira ducks down and swings again, with the demon bending back to escape the strike. Akaza realizes the mark has appeared and his speed has now increased. Kiyu uses water-breathing fourth form, striking tide and slices through Akaza's forearm. The latter, however, had attacked as well and had struck the side of Giyu's head. Tanjiro watches the battle, commenting how despite Giyu and Akaza are now virtually as fast as each other, Akaza had immediately matched Giyu's newfound power. He knows in a battle of stamina, humans will lose, and despite this battle taking place, the final goal is to beat Muzan. Tanjiro tries to think how Akaza's attacks manage to be so accurate, and how he can also predict attacks he doesn't see. Immediately remembering the moment Akaza mentioned battle spirit in the battle with Kyojiro, he attempts to define it and recalls the conversation he had with Inosuke. Inosuke claims that battle spirit feels like a stinging sensation with the enemies aiming for, Tanjiro believing it to be the reason he could notice Guatara attacks. Inosuke is asked to demonstrate, and he asked Tanjiro to look at the part of his body, which he accurately determines as his right shoulder. As Tanjiro becomes amazed, Inosuke notes that when someone is looking at him with a murderous gaze, it is easier to determine when they will attack, and his whole body will sting if that said attack really wants to kill him. However, he becomes angered that someone looking at him without the attempt to kill becomes difficult to notice. Remembering how the old lady at the Wisteria house suddenly appeared behind him without him able to notice it, he then reasons that if he battled a demon without showing the attempt to kill, it would be easy to kill them. But Tanjiro believes it impossible to kill a demon without showing any kind of intent. Despite remembering it as a childish conversation, Tanjiro notes interesting points within it and tries to use them with the current battle against Akaza. He believes Akaza does sense something in his opponents, and that gives him the edge in combat. But Tanjiro cannot figure out what it is. He tries to think how he can interfere with the destructive death compass needle he uses. Seeing Akaza open from Giyu's blow, he attempts to use his Hinokami Kagura flame darts on the Upper Moon's exposed neck, but Akaza catches the blade without seeing it, as the shock. Tanjiro watches helplessly. Akaza mocks him for his open flank and uses his other hand to strike at Tanjiro's stomach, but only manages to cut him slightly. At that moment, Tanjiro figures out the entire situation. Tanjiro remembers how his father seemed like a plant. He had never shown any emotional outburst and was always gentle, maintaining his demeanor till his death. Whenever he remembers him, he immediately pictures his soft smile and calming voice. Tanjiro remembers a question he asked him about what he thinks when he performs the Hinokami Kagura. Even as a child, Tanjiro knew that the dance involved performing all 12 moves from night till dawn, continuously. Worried about his frail body, Tanjiro asks if he can be the one to do it next year. Tanjiro thanks his son for his concern, but brushes aside his worry, stating that in his later years performing it, he hasn't felt tired. He remembers learning it from his own father, but notes that even though when he was younger and healthier than doing it, exhausted him greatly. He figured out, though the forms had useless moves, what mattered was using the correct breathing and movements, as well as releasing all your strength through minimal movement. Tanjiro states that by doing this, your mind becomes invisible. But to properly do so, he had to fine-tune his movement and sensations, utilize all his senses, and gain complete awareness of his body. He tells his son that by doing all of this, he can learn to remove unneeded parts of the Hinokami Kagura and learn just to do what is necessary and close off everything else. Tanjiro asks how he can do everything else, and his father responds by saying it's like people closing their eyes to hear better. His body will adapt and their movements will become natural. Tanjiro tells him that when his mind becomes invisible, he will see into the transparent world. But this is the end, as his body would have reached its absolute limit. As an amazed Tanjiro asks if he can do it as well. He is told that he can do so by working hard and not slacking off. An incident happened 10 days later before Tanjiro's death. A bear had come to the mountain, killing and devouring people. As the Kamado family sleeps through a blizzard, Tanjiro suddenly awakens and gets up, after which he asks his sleepy eldest son to accompany him. As Tanjiro and Tanjiro wander outside, the two encounter the very bear which is standing over 2 meters tall and is already believed to have killed at least 6 people. A frightened Tanjiro watches his father confront the bear with only an axe and his frail body. Tanjiro apologizes for its hunger, but warns the creature that coming any closer will mean facing him. He tells it that if anything tries to harm his family, he will show no mercy and take its life. As the bear roars and lashes forward to kill him, Tanjiro swings his axe and leaps up, decapitating the bear before it could move a step forward. As its giant head drops to the ground, Tanjiro tries to piece together what had just happened in that instant. Tanjiro would have to swing twice to get completely through its neck, and with his sense of smell, he realizes Tanjiro never wavered in the slightest. He had no hesitation, fear, no intent to kill, with his plant-like presence. He just simply killed it. Tanjiro looks behind and asks if his son had witnessed what happened. A shaken Tanjiro confirms he saw what took place and runs in to hug his father, as he tells his son to never forget what he saw. Tanjiro looks back and realizes that this moment was a form of training his perception. He was supposed to learn to see into the transparent world just like his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather before him. They would have had to learn in this way. He finally understands his father's words. He thinks back to when he managed to suddenly dodge Akaza's strike earlier that seemed like it was about to connect. Though it would have surely killed him, he managed to somehow escape it for just a slight moment. When Akaza grabbed his blade and it was poised to swing, Tanjiro had entered that transparent world, seeing Akaza's muscles through his body as he did to Hunting Yu. Managing to close off his other senses to dodge something completely unavoidable, his body became even faster. He apologizes to Inosuke for doubting him, and Tanjiro steals his resolve that while Giyu addles Akaza, he will use his newfound power to his best ability and beat the demon. Having seen the transparent world momentarily, Tanjiro realizes his own movement and speed had increased greatly. he was able to see how Akaza's body reacts in battle, and concludes he may be able to behead him if he removes his battle spirit completely to avoid his senses. Akaza begins to overwhelm Giyu, the latter having used all of his water-breathing forms, only for Akaza to immediately adapt to all of them and anticipate which one he was about to use. The Upper Moon decides to finally kill him, commending the Hashira for lasting this long in battle. As Tanjiro attempts to enter the selfless state, Giyu tries to strike the demon's head directly. Akaza responds, though, then using the side of his fist to break Giyu's Nchira and sword without getting harmed. As Giyu becomes stunned at having his sword broken, Akaza farewells him before crouching down and going to punch through his stomach. Suddenly, Akaza's hands fall off, saving Giyu from getting hurt, as Tanjiro has managed to enter the selfless state and bypass Akaza's compass needle. Giyu looks on at Tanjiro's new appearance and power. Akaza's body becomes stricken with the uncertainty at Tanjiro's changed aura, so he deploys his final form, technique development, blue-silver chaotic afterglow. Giyu looks at this new threat and is uncertain if he can negate it with its own dead calm. Tanjiro, however, seen into the transparent world again, is able to detect the attack with his increased perception and vision. Giyu is unable to beat Akaza's new technique and is knocked back against the wall with his dead calm being unable to handle the force. The demon commends him for surviving such a large number of fatal blows and tells him, "Don't die like Hyojiro or Tanjiro. Instead, become a demon, Giyu." However, the Water Hashira becomes confused, wondering how Akaza can state that he killed Tanjiro with Tanjiro standing directly behind him. Realizing maybe he is unable to sense his partner, he mutters to Tanjiro to go for the neck now that Akaza is unaware. Tanjiro calls out to the Upper Moon and declares that he would decapitate him. Annoying Giyu for announcing his attack out loud, Akaza retaliates by attempting to swipe the Demon Slayer's head, only for Tanjiro to duck down to safety. Suddenly he notices he cannot sense anything, seeing Tanjiro as completely different from before, with his battle spirit seemingly gone. Akaza tries to calm himself and believes that he will be able to sense an attack. But without warning, his head is sliced completely off by Tanjiro, who is using the Hinokami Kagura Setting Sun transformation. With Giyu stunned at Tanjiro's sudden improvement, Akaza declares that this is impossible. Despite being beheaded by Tanjiro, Akaza internally reflects on the battle spirit of people. He had never encountered someone who could remove theirs, commenting that fighting Tanjiro felt like fighting a plant. With his senses and compass not working properly on the battlefield, anything unexpected can happen. He notices Tanjiro managing to surpass his own speed in a short amount of time.
Precise showing no intent to kill, Akaza believes Tanjiro has achieved the selfless state he so badly wanted to attain himself, something he believes that he should have done so by now. The upper rank tries to put his head back on top of his neck with the resolve to continue fighting. However, Giyu flings his broken sword at his head, knocking it away from his grasp. The upper rank repeats his drive to continue to get stronger as his head starts to disintegrate. Tanjiro becomes relieved but immediately stiffens up due to his body hitting its limits. However, upon seeing Akaza's body not disintegrating, Giyu and Tanjiro worriedly look on. Akaza's headless body activates destructive death compass needle again and immediately attempts to hit Tanjiro's neck. Though he barely misses, the demon changes stance and hits Tanjiro square on the side, knocking him away. Tanjiro realizes Akaza is trying to make his head a weak spot, no longer similar to Muzan earlier. He tries to get up, but faints due to his body reaching its absolute limit. Giyu sees Akaza going for his unconscious comrade and uses water-breathing fourth form, striking Tide to stop him, though the cut instantly heals. Giyu then declares that if Akaza wanted to kill Tanjiro, he would have to go through him first, and takes his stance to fight once again. Akaza sees his indomitable spirit, one that does not bend in the face of any obstacle. Suddenly, he sees the same man from earlier, who comments that we wield the sword in our hearts. The things we use are our fists. Calling the man an eyesore, Akaza moves forward to engage Giyu, but is internally held back by the vision of a young woman wishing Hakuji-san to just stop already. As Gyu readies to fight Akaza once more, he realizes the severity of the situation. His body has reached its limits. His senses are failing. His body is numb, and the only thing keeping him up is his breathing. Calling it a miracle for him to continue battling despite the heavy toll on his own, Gyu now focuses on protecting the unconscious Tanjiro, resolving to never let friends or family die on his watch again, knowing Tanjiro would do the same. The woman's spirit grabs Akaza, telling him to not go. Akaza tells her to go away, asking who she is, and she tearfully begs for them to go to the other side. But he only responds to her that he must kill Tanjiro and Gyu. When asked why, Akaza's only answer is that he must get stronger. But when she asks why he needs to get stronger, he answers, because if I don't, I won't be able to bring the medicine back for Dad. As Akaza's memories come flashing back to him, we dive into a flashback where Akaza was once known as Hakuji, an 11-year-old boy who stole money and food to keep his father alive. One fateful day, he was caught, beaten, and given tattoos to mark him as a thief. The villager's magistrate warns the boy his hands would be removed the next time he steals, only for him to say that he can go and cut them off, as he still has his feet and will steal with those instead. The magistrate tells him the beatings he received would cause a strong man to become numb, calling him a demon child for being able to handle it. The boy continues on, telling him to call him by that name, saying that he was born with fangs. After his beatings and threats by the authorities, Hakuji walked home until a man informed him of terrible news. His father had heard he was caught and had hung himself in shame. While Hakuji was in the cemetery, he read the final letter that his father had written out before his death. His father wrote to him, "Dear Hakuji, please live an honest life so that you can turn over a new lead. I don't want to live off money that has been stolen from others, and I'm sorry for being a nuisance." After reading the letter and finding his headstone, Hakuji tearfully grabs it and grieves his death. He asks how his father can make peace with such people, finally cursing the world and telling it that everyone can just go to hell. Hakuji recalls his beatings for stealing money and how he could endure anything for his father, no matter how severe. He wonders why he had hung himself, declaring he would have died for him. After being expelled from Edo due to his rage, he was left to wander the streets, eventually making his way to a village where he found 7 men and almost beat them to death, leaving them there unconscious, all while saying his father never hurt anyone. He didn't bother him, and he didn't need to apologize. Afterwards, a martial artist came by, drawn by the news a boy was about to be killed, instead finding that said boy had actually beaten the 7 men barehanded. Amazed at this feat, the man cheerfully asks if he would like to be a student, only for the still-hurt Hakuji to threaten him back. Later on, the man takes the awakened Hakuji for a tour of his dojo, and he introduces himself as Keizo, a master who teaches the bare-fisted martial art called Soryu style. However, he didn't have a single student, so he made his living off handyman work. Keizo asks the boy to care for his sick daughter, a task his recent wife used to do but had killed herself over due to its exhausting nature. Hakuji asks why he would leave his daughter with a criminal, only for Keizo to cheerfully remind him that he beat up that said criminal. Kaiser's happy demeanor reminds Akaza of why he hates Tanjiro so much, because Tanjiro reminds him of Keizo, a figment of his boring and worthless past. As he continues to call this past worthless, he reaches the memory of where he first met Kayuki's sick appearance reminding him of his father's. As Kaizo goes away for work, he leaves the two together. Kayuki asks if he is hurt, seeing his injured face. Akaza curses his human life, remembering the promises he made and failed to deliver. He declared his life worthless, filled with empty promises. Hakuji asks himself why sick people are always apologizing, remembering the times his father did, and Kayuki now apologizing that he can't train while caring for her. Kayuki was born with a weak body and had to be attended to day and night. However, Hakuji was fine with the task as he had previously cared for his ill father, and his resilient nature meant that he never tired. He never felt like playing around anyway, and simply trained in his free time. Hakuji mentioned there would be fireworks on display and that he was willing to carry her to the bridge to watch with him. When Kayuki seems unsure, he reminds her of next year and the year after that. There she begins to cry, somewhat annoying him that she would burst into tears amid conversation. He believes she cries due to the depressing nature of her illness, while commenting her crying made him feel uncomfortable. While Keizo and Hakuji share a drink at the well, the master mentions how their names are actually similarly structured to be based on a phrase meaning protect. Therefore, we must protect something. A fact that makes Keizo laugh. Keizo recalls how the dojo came to be. He says he had protected an old man with the Soryu style of combat, and that man, amazed at the feat, had given him the land and place for the dojo. Later on, however, the nearby Kenjutsu dojo found out and began to harass the Soryu dojo, which led to him having no students. This was mitigated in Kaizo's eyes by training Hakuji and caring for Kayuki, something that he said healed his heart. Years later, Hakuji turns 18 and Kayuki turns 16. In that time, Kayuki had gotten better and no longer needed to continually lie down. She was also now happy and bright. While cleaning the floors, Hakuji was summoned to the dojo and spoke with Keizo, where he told him that he wanted to take over the dojo, and casually mentions how he can also have his daughter, Kayuki, as well, a statement which ends up shocking the both of them. Hakuji never believed he could have a future as a criminal, much less a future as a husband with a wife. He remembers his father's letter to him and recalls the swelling feeling his life could go anywhere, declaring now that he wants more than nothing to protect Kayuki and Keizo, even at the cost of his own life. Hakuji travels back home to tell his father's grave about his marriage, but as he returned to the dojo, he suddenly began to breathe heavily and a sinking feeling came over him. There, someone informed him the well they drank from was poisoned by the Kenjutsu dojo, killing Kayuki and Keizo. Seeing their bloodied, lifeless bodies on the dojo floor, Hakuji laments that he's never there to protect his loved ones in a crisis. He suddenly remembers a moment back when Kayuki came with him to watch the village's New Year fireworks. While there, Kayuki asked about the conversation they had about the fireworks when they were younger. Something that he had forgotten, but something that she had never forgotten. When he was unable to watch them that year, he suggested the next one to her, or the year after that. And she recalls when she didn't believe in herself living another year or so on. Kayuki remembers when her mother killed herself, being unable to care for her any longer, and believed in a way her father was tired of caring for her as well. She saw Hakuji casually asking if she was willing to see them next year, giving her hope of a future. Kayuki asks if he would like to be her husband, and Hakuji graciously answers, "So yes, I will become stronger than anyone else and protect you for my entire life." In the end, though, Akaza laments that it was just simply words, and he couldn't manage anything in his life filled with rage and losing the people he loved once again. Hakuji went to the Kenjutsu dojo and brutally killed all 67 members inside. Using the Soryu style, he eviscerated their bodies. The dojo was found with crushed skulls, destroyed organs, brain, limbs, and eyeballs strewing throughout the building. All the corpses destroyed to the point they were unrecognizable as a human body.
The incident was so horrific and absurd that it was regarded as a fictional story before being erased from history. In the wake of the destruction, a blooded and broken Hakuji encounters Muzan Kabutsuji. Muzan had heard about the carnage and mistakenly thought that he had sent a demon to do so, instead finding that a mere human had actually done it, leaving him somewhat disappointed. Hakuji threatened to kill him when the demon lord suddenly rushed forward and pierced his head with his hand. Before he could fight back, Muzan comments he was thinking about building a group of 12 powerful demons and asks Hakuji if he could withstand the amount of blood that he was about to be given. Hakuji declares to him that he no longer cares about anything anymore and transformed into the demon Akaza then and there. Akaza recalls losing his human memories in the wake of turning into a demon, but continued to have the drive to get stronger and stronger, though in reality he had nothing left to protect. In the end, Akaza comments that his life was nothing more than a pathetic, comical, uninteresting story. As Akaza laments he cannot go to heaven like his father, Keizo, and Kauki, he becomes furious that Tanjiro and Giyu have reminded him of his painful past. He curses humans as weak, soft, brittle. They die right away and disappear into nothing. Suddenly, Tanjiro awakens from his ordeal, shocked at how he fainted mid-battle. As Akaza begins to regenerate his head, he begins to deploy his annihilation type. As Tanjiro yells at him to stop, the demon becomes shocked that Tanjiro has managed to survive his kick, declaring he will behead Akaza again. Tanjiro's sword ignites with the fire of the Hinokami Kagura. However, his sword slips out of his grasp, forcing Tanjiro to punch Akaza's face instead.
The punch reminds him of when he first met Keizo, making him remember why he hates weak people. Weak people never fight face to face. They poison wells. They are impatient. He killed these weak people with his fists, and he suddenly realizes, throughout his life as a demon, he turned his master's fighting style into a bloody weapon and never respected his father's last words. Finally realizing who he must truly kill, as Tanjiro panics about his lost sword and seeing Akaza about to use the same technique that killed Rengoku, he suddenly notices Gyuyu in the attack range. Though Gyuyu tells him not to worry about him, Tanjiro grabs him and throws both themselves out of the technique's path. Suddenly, he sees Akaza, smiling slightly, followed by an immense explosion. The attack leaves the surroundings devastated, as well as Akaza's body, now a broken, bloody mess. Wondering why Akaza would attack himself, Tanjiro smells a scent of gratitude coming from the corpse, as well as asking himself why he had smiled before self-detonating. The body begins to regenerate, but Akaza stops the process, telling himself that the fight is over. He had lost fair and square. He comments that Tanjiro had magnificent technique, anticipating and slashing before he could react. The broken body begins to walk away, while Akaza's spirit comments he would go to hell as a man. When he stops, Tanjiro's confusion, his spirit meets with his father's, asking if he was all right. His father comments yes, calling him Hakuji and thanking him as he bows and crouches down apologizing for being unable to fix himself. His head is held by Keizo's spirit. Keizo tells him that they would never abandon him no matter what, despite Akaza not being able to go to heaven with him. As he calls out for his master, Muzan appears, grabs his head, and scolds him, reminding him that he had to get stronger and continue fighting. With that, his body starts to regenerate again, even quicker. Akaza voices his will to keep his promise and get stronger, declaring once again that he will kill everyone. Suddenly, though, Kawuki touches his face, thanking Hakuji and saying that he has done enough. Though Muzan appears again, calling him Akaza once more, he overcomes Muzan's control and grabs Kyuki's spirit, on the verge of tears as once again the human Hakuji. He tearfully apologizes for being unable to protect her, for not being there when she needed him, for not being able to keep his promise. While he cries for forgiveness, Kauki's glad that Hakuji had remembered them all, despite his long demon life, and returning as a human again, with the words "Welcome back, my husband." Akaza stops his regeneration, and Tanjiro watches as his body finally fades into ash. Hakuchi calls out to his father, Kaizo and Kauki, that he is back home. His spirit becomes engulfed in the fires of hell, joined by Kyuki. Tanjiro watches as Akaza's body finally fades into nothing, declaring that the battle is finally over. Realizing that he must reach Tamioku to help her, his body can no longer handle the fatigue and he falls on his face unconscious. Surprised that Tanjiro had suddenly fainted, Gyuyu tries to call out to him but faints from exhaustion as well, resting his body on his sword. A Kisuge crow calls out the aftermath of the battle. Tanjiro and Gyuyu have managed to defeat the Upper Moon 3, but are now unconscious. Elsewhere, we see that Kokushibo no longer feels Akaza's presence and realizes he has been defeated. As Akaza has lost, the Upper Moon 1 comments that he could have never been able to beat him, remembering his threat earlier at his life. As he voices that Akaza had opened up the path to reach further height and abandoned it, he grabs his own sword and furiously slashes the pillars of his room, cursing Akaza as weak. Over in the cult room, Doma hears the news of Akaza's demise and comments that he felt like Akaza had turned into a different being before he had died. As he brushes aside his comment, he asks Konoha for her name. She introduces herself as Konoha, adding that she is the little sister of Kane and Shinobu Kocho. Doma is confused, judging that she doesn't appear to be blood related to the two, but nonetheless comments that the young girls are delicious either way. While on the subject of eating woman, Doma mentions the subordinate's conscious decision not to eat woman owing that fact to his demise. Despite mentioning that women have more nutritional content to demons than men, Akaza refused and was even given special permission by Muzan to do so, since Akaza was only deployed by Muzan on special missions. As he mourns for his best friend's death, Konoha tells him to stop the lies. She figures out easily Dama does not even feel the least bit saddened, as the color on his face has stayed the exact same. When Dama responded back, it's due to him being a demon, though Konoha retorts by mentioning that demons and humans both circulate blood and the color of their faces can change. She mentions that Kane had felt sorry for him as he feels nothing. She talks about how all people are born with the ability to feel happiness as well as sadness and anger. Dama cannot understand these feelings, but knowing he was intelligent, Konoha instead tears into how he covers up his lack of feelings with a facade of lies, pretending to experience emotion to hide the fact his heart feels nothing. He feels no happiness, no bitterness, no pain, calling him an empty shell and saying his facade is so comical it's stupid. Finally, she mockingly asks, "Why were you even born?" Dama comments that throughout his life, he has talked with numerous young women, but never a bully like Konoha, and asks how could she say something so cruel. Konoha retaliates by saying it's because of her outright hatred of him, her desire to completely cut off his head. She changes her opinion of him and tells him that he's not very smart, calling him a disgrace and smiling as she mentions it, it was better to kill him as his life is utterly pointless and meaningless. Dama instantly appears behind her trying to slice her neck, but Konoha reacts in time and however crouches down to slash through his abdomen when he tries to send out ice dolls to hit her. She dodges the incoming attack to safety. As Dama heals, he comments that her reaction speed has accelerated and she is adjusting to his own movement. Also, she has not inhaled any of his ice, despite it being an extremely difficult task to attack in her mana without using a breathing technique. Dama suddenly realizes that Konoha might actually be more powerful than Shinobu. Konoha feels that the goosebumps throughout her body aren't stopping. She even knows to put strength into her fingertips to hold her sword or risk it shaking. She mentions the demons she had faced in the past pale in comparison to Dama, but she is able to face him due to the immense anger she feels. Anger so powerful, it feels like her body is literally burning. She feels she must rampage at him or her body would rip itself apart. The dizziness in her head and her anger turning into hatred, she calls out that she hates Dama and asks how he could kill her entire family. Konoha vanishes and instantly appears before him, using flower breathing, 5th form, peonies of futility to rapidly slash him. Dama comments that the consecutive attacks are pretty, and retaliates with his blood demon art, barren hanging garden. Konoha attacks back with the flower breathing, 2nd form, honorable snow plum to destroy the ice created. Dama notices the key to withstanding his attacks are her eyes. She notices his movements and predicts his next actions. In anticipation complimenting her as smart and above the average swordsman, the demon decides the best course of action is to gouge out her eyes. Dama slashes at her face, but Konoha bends back in time, only sustaining a small cut to the left side of her temple. Using flower breathing 6th form, whirling peach, she attacks back at the upper moon, who compliments her body and her flexibility, saying that it is extremely well trained. Dama deploys his fearsome freezing clouds, forcing Konoha to close her eyes or risk freezing them.
While on the defensive, she is attacked again by Doma, using blood demon art, lotus vines. The ice vines converging on her and forcing Kano to slice the incoming attack to defend against them. When she has finished cutting them apart, Doma quickly attacks with his blood demon art, cold white princesses. Kano again backs away to avoid the fog, but must dodge again when Doma unleashes another blood demon art, wintry icicles from above, and nearly impales her. Doma taunts her for getting away from him, mentioning that in order to kill him, she needs to actually get up close. He disappears for a moment and reappears clutching her Nichiren blade, despite Kano aware and anticipating his next moves. Doma mocks her for not holding on to the sword and sticks it into the bridge near him. He tells the demon slayer to come and get it, and deploys his blood demon art, scattering lotuses in her direction. Kano forces herself to look through the incoming hail of ice to find the area of minimum damage, but sustains multiple cuts to her face. Still, suddenly, Inosuke smashes through the roof, announcing out of the blue that the Lord himself, Inosuke, is coming through, and using beast-breathing 5th fan, crazy cutting, he destroys the incoming wave of ice shards, saving Kano. He thanks the Kasugai Crow for leading him to the right room. Inosuke looks intently at Doma's eyes and enthusiastically realizes he is the Upper Moon too. He declares he will defeat him and finally become a Hashira. A confused Doma mentions that he isn't hiding his identity as Upper Moon too. Inosuke sees the injured Kano and warns her that Shinobu will get angry at seeing her condition. But when Kano doesn't respond and she becomes upset, Inosuke is completely stunned into silence. Doma overhears him and mentions that Shinobu will live forever inside him, as that's how everyone I eat gets saved. Inosuke is left completely shocked as he remembers a memory he had where Shinobu pinky promised him to not remove the bandage of his injured hand. Inosuke angrily declares, Onnoretcha shreds trash and charges towards Doma, despite Kano warning him not to inhale the cold air he creates, using beast breathing, fourth form slice and dice. Inosuke slashes at Doma at the same time the demon comments on his messed up technique, as well as noticing his chipped blades and unorthodox fighting style. When Doma attempts to slash at Inosuke's neck, he flips back and deflects the fan with his feet, earning a compliment from the upper moon for his flexibility, and intrigued by his mask. Inosuke lands next to Kano and presents her with her blade, stolen from the unaware Doma. To her shock, Doma comments that the Demon Slayer is fast and grows more ice to attack, only for Inosuke to deflect them back and kick him in the stomach, knocking him away. Inosuke charges forward and readies a slash. Doma comments that the attack is far from the sword's range, so when the boar-headed figure swings, he becomes completely and utterly shocked that the attack had managed to reach him and slashed him across his eyes. Inosuke had used his beast-breathing ninth form, extending bendy slash, dislocating the joints of his arms to extend his range. He relocates the bones of his arm, but is angered at the new attack's inaccuracy made him miss Doma's head. To Kano's complete shock, Doma is left amused at his unusual opponent, and comments that throughout his own life he had never met a fighter like him. Inosuke takes the compliment and says that it's because the other riffraff are losers and nothing compared to him. But while Inosuke is talking, his mask instantly appears off his face. Surprising him and shocking Kano, Doma in that moment had stolen it without either Demon Slayer noticing, and comments that the boar skin is quite old. As Inosuke angrily demands his boar mask back, Doma suddenly responds that he knows he has seen Inosuke face somewhere before. Doma asks if he and Inosuke had met in the past, causing Inosuke to get angry and retort at his statement, demanding him to hand his mask back. However, Doma is sure that they have, and he knows him from somewhere. Inosuke responds again that he has not met Doma before, but Doma mentions the only one he encountered before was Shinobu, leading Inosuke to comment that he felt as if he had met her before. When Kano attempts to lead Inosuke away, saying Doma is spotting random nonsense, Doma becomes surprised and offended, stating his only saving grace is his seriousness and long and clear memory, even during his human years. With that, Doma pierces his own skull with his finger, to Kano and Inosuke's shock and disgust. Doma fiddles with the inside of his brain until he reaches a particular memory and retells it to the two. 15 years ago, there was a young woman with a baby, roughly 17 to 18 years of age. She was abused by her husband and mother-in-law daily and encountered Doma's Paradise Faith cult. She had no siblings or parents and had no place else to go. When Doma first met her, her face was severely swollen from the beatings, commenting that it was pretty rough even to him. The woman was even partially blind, but when he touched the woman's face, her face went back to normal. She was so beautiful, it left an everlasting impression on the even apathetic Doma. He mentions that she had the same face as Inosuke and concludes that it must have been his mother. Inosuke says that he has no mother and was raised by boars, to which Doma replies that you're a human, so a human must have given birth to you. But Inosuke charges forward without listening and readies as beast-breathing Six Fang to Kano's concern, only for Doma to state this encounter is a miracle and simultaneously slashes at Inosuke's chest twice, creating an X-like mark. He quickly summons more ice and knocks both demon slayers into the cult room's pond. As Kano urges Inosuke to calm down, Doma continues his story. He says that he had no intention of eating the woman, as having someone as beautiful as her next to you felt pretty good. Though he considered her unintelligent, she was talented at singing. The woman continually sang a pinky promise lullaby to her baby. Doma mentioned you that she sang with different lyrics each time, and adding that the song soon became a village song. Inosuke realizes that the pinky promise song was not because of Shinobu. Doma says that he purely planned on letting her live her life, but learned that though she wasn't particularly smart, the woman named Kotaha was sharp. She soon learned that Doma devoured the followers of the cult and ended up confronting him for his lies and fleeing the temple. Kotaha apologizes to Inosuke, cursing herself for continually making mistakes, even going the wrong way after she left the temple. All the while, she repeatedly kept saying that she was sorry. She became lost in the forest and unable to find the village. Cornered at a cliff's edge, she apologizes once more to Inosuke before dropping him off the cliff into the water. Doma kills her shortly after this. He believed the baby would have definitely died from the drop off the cliff and cried at how sad the situation had become. Inosuke suddenly figures out that she was killed and that Doma had eaten her to the very bone, and noted that if she went to her husband, he would have continued to beat her, and if she was alone by herself on the road, she would have ended up dead as well. Doma mocks Kutaha's life for being so unfortunate, asking if there was ever a happy moment in it, and calls her existence pointless. Kano furiously tells him to shut up, though as Inosuke grabs his fallen sword from the water, he remembers his mother's love for him. Doma comments that it was truly a miracle meeting Inosuke here, which fills him with more rage, as he declares that the demon who killed his mother and his friends is standing right before his eyes. He stands back up and thanks Doma for letting him remember everything, but voices that the demon won't cut off his head now. He takes a stance and readies to fight Doma, declaring that he is going to show him what hell is truly like. Doma tells Inosuke that though he was raised by boars and knows his way with words, he is still mistaken. The demon claims that heaven and hell don't exist, and that they are figments of human fantasies. To him, the humans who live righteously suffer tragedies, while the evil live free to do whatever they want, adding that since divine punishment doesn't exist, mentally weak people therefore believe the evil go to hell upon their deaths. He tells them they keep this belief deep in their minds and calls humans pitiful. Inosuke screams out that he decides then that he'll instead create a hell for Doma, as he charges, telling Doma to stop talking about his mother's life as unfortunate. Doma retaliates with his blood demon art, Freezing Cloud, and Inosuke uses his 10th fang, Whirling Fangs, rotating his blades to disperse the icy cloud. Kano attempts to attack Doma from behind, but he anticipates it, swiping his fans at her neck. Though she parries the fan, his swipe still knocks her into the water. Doma clings to the roof, causing Inosuke to yell for him to come down and face him. Doma tells them that Akaza is defeated and he no longer has the time, instead creating ice dolls to fight the demon slayers. As they land, Inosuke and Kano are confused, but are soon shocked when the dolls use scattering lotuses to fight them. Doma tells them the dolls are as powerful as him, leaving them to it as he leaves, making Inosuke furious. Kano tells him to focus on their battle, as a doll uses frozen lotuses to slash at Inosuke, forcing him back. Doma notices Inosuke isn't breathing in his fog, confusing him, as the dolls use cold white princesses and envelop the room with more fog. Inosuke becomes incensed that everything around him is freezing. Doma is intrigued by him as a fighter that he had never faced before. He decided to force the demon slayer
to use all their techniques, as the information would be useful to him in the future. As Kano was forced to hold back another Lotus Vine onslaught, she hopes she and Inosuke can keep Doma inside the room with them for a little while longer. However, Doma immediately decides to create a 5th doll to kill the companions quicker, or face getting scolded. With that, he forges one and his fans, and releases her, the doll immediately deploying wintry icicles to knock Kano further back. Soon, Inosuke's arms get slashed by the icy vines, worrying Kano as she tells him to hold out for just a while longer. She herself becomes overwhelmed by the continuous slashes of ice lotuses. Doma overhears her and is confused at how they will survive for any longer. Knowing his dolls will record anything during the battle, he decides to leave. But as Doma opens up the door of the cult room, his face suddenly begins to melt, confusing him. To Kano's gratitude, he collapses to the floor and suddenly thinks back to Shinobu from earlier, in the past when Shinobu and Kano had conversed about if they ever encountered the Upper Moon too. Shinobu believes if she encountered him and Kano happened to fight alongside her, she would need to be eaten first. Shocking her younger sister, Kano pleads that she and her would fight the demon together, only for Shinobu to respond back to abandon those thoughts. She tells her that she knows an Upper Moon is as strong as at least 3 Hashira at minimum. And according to their late sister Kane, the Upper Moon too is gluttonous with an obsession for eating women. Shinobu knows if the demon faces a Hashira with great abilities, a body in excellent condition, and is a woman, he would definitely eat her. Worrying Kano further,
She tells Kanawa that her body is currently concentrated with wisteria poison. As Kanawa tells her she is also willing to go through the exact same thing, Shinobu tells her that it is impossible to reach the level that she is at, as she has been absorbing the poison for over a year now. Shinobu confesses that she was the first to do such a feat, herself unsure of the potential side effects in the future, and unsure if her plan would work on the Upper Moon or even Muzan. She states her sword has 50 milliliters of poison, but whatever demon consumes her would also consume 37 kilograms worth of poison, and her body weight. Doma collapses further from the effects of Shinobu's poison, his arm falling off, his bones beginning to melt, and his regeneration failing. He realizes he never felt the poison circulate through him until now. His eyes dull, soon fracture and collapse as well. To Inosuke's confusion, Kanawa realizes Shinobu's poison is working, and they now have Doma cornered. Shinobu tells Kanawa that she doesn't even know if her life's worth of expertise on poison would even work on an Upper Moon. Demon Kagaya Ubuyashiki himself had deemed it impossible, but advises her to consult with a certain demon for further knowledge. Shinobu tells her sister if the poisoning did start working, she must never let her guard down, adding that the only way to kill the Upper Moon is by severing his neck. She knows she will definitely weaken him, but she tells Kanawa to deal the finishing blow. Back in the reality of the fight, Kanawa becomes assured she will kill the Upper Moon too, and resolves to not let Shinobu's life go to waste. As Shin and Naotsuke converge on Doma, he summons his final technique, Blood Demon Art Rime, Water Lily Bodice Vidiva. With the two stunned at his new threat, the giant ice figure slams down onto the cold pond, sending Inosuke and Kanawa flying back. Kanawa realizes if they get forced away from the fog, Doma will have the time to recover, and if they entered the fog and inhaled it, they would no longer be able to fight. However, she notices, though, that Doma's bodice saber is powerful. It is still shoddy. Doma has lost all of his precision, and creating it was a last-ditch effort. She decides to use her own last technique, and remembers her last moments with Shinobu. Shinobu warns her that using the technique might blind her eyeballs, are delicate, with very thin blood vessels and nerves, telling her to not endanger and burden herself by releasing such a powerful technique. But Kanawa rejects her warning, asking why should she worry about her vision when Shinobu gave her own life. She calls her sister sweet and an honorable person, declaring that she wanted to protect her life with her life, and she wanted her Oe, Kyo, Sumi, and Naho, and herself to all go home together. Kanawa activates flower-breathing final form, Equental Vermilion Eye, causing her eyes to flush full of blood and her perception heightened to an even further level. The giant Buddha saber becomes slow in her eyes. She realizes her protective coating that wraps around most of her eyeballs are turning red, and in that moment, quickly slices up the ice figure's hands to reach Doma as she swings at Doma's decaying head. The bodice saber turns back and blasts Kanawa with icy fog, freezing her back and arms. Her sword reaches his neck, but she can no longer swing further with her arms stuck frozen. Inosuke, seeing this and having been recently saved by Kanawa, uses his new technique, sudden, throwing strike, hurling his blades at Doma. His swords connect with Kano's, gripping into them and driving her blade through Doma's neck, decapitating him. In that moment, Doma expresses his disbelief at having his head sliced off. He expresses his self-pity for losing to a sword wielder who didn't have enough strength to slice off necks, even though he had put much effort into what he believed was for other people's sakes. However, he doesn't give up right away and thinks to himself that he still has a chance and might not die like Muzan. He also knows Akaza was also able to start growing back his head. However, as Doma's head falls to the floor and bounces, his body begins to disintegrate, and he realizes that he is truly going to die. He thinks to himself how he doesn't feel anything. Recalling back to his childhood, his mother had stabbed his father to death, and he later had flirted with numerous female followers, later committing suicide via poison shortly after. Despite this tragedy, his only thoughts were about ventilating the room. He couldn't comprehend the deaths because of his apathy, and was only bothered by the smell of their blood. Doma remembers how he was turned into a demon at the age of 20, and lived for over a century, but in the end, human emotions had been alien to him. In the afterlife, Shinobu holds Doma's head in her right hand, the former expressing relief at Doma's death with a smile. She states that she can now be at rest. Doma greets her, asking whether her name was Shinobu or Kane. Shinobu smiles and tells him that he doesn't have to remember their names, asking him not to address them because it was creepy. Domo compliments Shinobu about the intensity of the poison, claiming he didn't even notice the poison until it had fully circulated through his body. Shinobu explains that Tamiyo had assisted her in making the poison, expressing her slight frustration that if she could, she would have wanted to kill Domo with the poison she had made herself. Suddenly, Domo claims that his missing heart feels like it is beating, asking Shinobu whether this was love, expressing his surprise that emotions did indeed exist. He then goes on to think that heaven and hell may exist as well, asking Shinobu whether she wanted to go to hell with him. To this, the latter tells him to just go to hell already, as she is completely and utterly sick of him. Meanwhile, Inosuke stomps on the place where Doma's disintegrating head once was, yelling insults, growing dizzy, then falls to the ground. He recalls a conversation he had with Tanjiro and Zenitsu. Inosuke had been yelling that he didn't have a mother, but Tanjiro tells him that everyone has a mother, to which Inosuke responded that he was abandoned, which meant that his mother did not want him. Zenitsu reprised that if Inosuke had truly been abandoned, his mother wouldn't have bothered to name him. Inosuke retorts back that he doesn't have memories of his mother, which was the same as not having one at all. But Tanjiro gently reminds him not to speak of his mother that way, stating that his mother must have loved him a lot. Suddenly, Inosuke begins to cry as he remembers his mother. Kano, on the other hand, looks for Shinobu's hair clip, noting her inability to see clearly from her right eye. She realizes her own hair clip, formerly Kane's, is now broken. To her sadness, Kano apologizes to her sister and recalls the time that Kane had died. She was unable to cry at that moment, bothering her greatly. Kano had been making excuses inside of her heart and clutches at her chest, but when she feels the apparitions of Shinobu and Kane, softly patting her on the head and telling her that she did well, Kane looks up to only find that they weren't there. Elsewhere in the dream world, Shinobu reunites with her sister and her parents in the pond, holding both her adoptive sister's hairpins. Kanoa begins to cry. As Tanjiro sleeps, he smells something burning. He tries to sleep further, but he realizes that it is a fire. Quickly jolting awake, he sees Giyu putting his sword through a small fire he built. When asked by Tanjiro, Giyu states his wounds haven't stopped bleeding despite putting pressure on them, resulting in him burning them. To Tanjiro's disgust, Giyu extended the offer to Tanjiro, noting if the bleeding in his arm didn't halt, he can burn them as well, to which Tanjiro worriedly agreed. Tanjiro stands upright and holds his sword out to be on guard, but Giyu states that this fight is only the beginning. The final goal is Muzan, but he's worried we may soon face Upper Moon 2 or even 1.
At that moment, Akatsugai Crow announces that Shinobu Kano and Inosuke had defeated Upper Moon 2, to the shock of both of the water breathers. Tanjiro then realizes that all of the Slayers are slowly getting closer to Muzan. Meanwhile, Matsuri had found Nakim, now the Upper Moon 4. Obanai realizes the previous one, defeated by Mochiro and company, had now been replaced. Mitsuri laments that Shinobu risked her own life to win, despite being younger than her, giving her the motivation to attack Nakim head-on. The demon summons a door, however, slamming Mitsuri away to her embarrassment. Obanai catches her, though, and takes her to an upper platform to safety, only for the floors to be opened by Nakim, causing both of them to nearly fall. They regroup, however. Nakim retaliates by causing the floors Mitsuri is standing on to rocket to the ceiling, resulting in her nearly getting crushed till she destroys the floor she is on. The lover Hashira claims that she won't fall for that trick earlier, nearly hitting Nakim, who subsequently opens another door, causing an annoyed Mitsuri to fall through. Obanai uses snake-breathing, second form venom fangs of the Narrowhead, but misses. When Nakim summons a building to block his path, to this he comments that though Nakim's blood demon art isn't deadly, it's by far the most annoying and troublesome. Elsewhere, Gyome and Muchiro continue through the castle, sensing Muzan is close. Suddenly, a wall compartment pushes Muchiro, separating the two. He is forced through multiple walls before landing in a room full of numerous pillars. Inside the room, the demon notices him and comments he looks rather familiar. Michiru is shocked as it reveals that he is now face-to-face with the Upper Moon 1. The Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo examines Michiru Tokido in the transparent world and recognizes something in the boy, as Michiru looks on at him thinking that the Upper Rank 1 is quite dignified and majestic.
Michiru notices is the blade at the demon's side and wonders if he had been a demon slayer in the past. Suddenly, Michiru's hands start shaking, with the sword handle in its grip unable to shake the feeling of dread from being in front of Kokushibo, with his body refusing to battle something that had never happened before in his entire life. Michiru attempts to compose himself. Kokushibo asks him what his name was, and Michiru tells him, with Kokushibo responding that the Tsukiguni name has died out. Puzzled, Michiru asks him who Tsukiguni is, and Kokushibo continues, saying that it was inevitable after so many centuries. The upper rank tells Michiru that when he had been human, his name was Michikatsu Tsukiguni, and then reveals that Michiru is his descendant. Michiru's eyes widen with shock, and he refuses to believe it at first, with his mind swimming with questions about the upper rank coming back to Earth. Quickly, Michiru steels himself and prepares to attack, with Kokushibo praising his mental strength, lauding him for overcoming his panic in such a short period of time, as Michiru swoops forward and attacks him with a mist-breathing second form, 8-layered mist, that the demon effortlessly dodges in the blink of an eye, appearing behind Michiru. Kokushibo praises the boy's breathing technique, seeing that his descendant was a mist-breathing user, and then swiftly dodges a mist-breathing 5th form, sea of clouds and haze, launched by the Hashira, accurately deducing Michiru's age as being 14. Kokushibo is impressed that the boy's swordsmanship is so refined at his young age and his mental fortitude to quell his fear and battle the demon. Taking pride in the strength still flowing from those of his blood, displeased, Michiru rebuffs the upper rank, saying that if 100 years have indeed passed, then not a drop of Kokushibo's blood remains in him. Michiru then activates his Demon Slayer mark and performs a mist-breathing 7th form, obscuring clouds, a technique that Kokushibo had never seen before. As Michiru slices at the demon's neck, Kokushibo quickly evades the attack, impressed with the beauty and grace of the technique. During his own blade, Kokushibo performs moon-breathing 1st form Dark Moon Evening Palace that Michiru is unable to keep up with, and the Hashira sadly loses his left hand as a result. Shocked that the upper rank is able to use breathing techniques as a demon, Michiru quickly attempts to restrict the bleeding from the stump on his arm by tightening the sleeves of his robe with his teeth. He then dashes forward and attacks Kokushibo despite his injuries, and the demon is impressed at the courage and the skill of his descendant as the Hashira performs a mist-breathing 4th form, Shifting Flow and Slash. Kokushibo catches the boy's blade between his fingers and turns it on him, pinning him to a pillar. And then he asks Michiru to allow him to turn the Hashira into a demon so that he could serve Muzan Kabitsuji. Kokushibo stands in front of Michiru after having pinned him to a pillar with his own blade and says that his heart is moved on seeing one of his own descendants, something he had never imagined. Michiru stares at the upper rank in silence as Kokushibo continues and says that the Hashira arm would regrow once he became a demon, certain that Muzan would allow such a thing, given that the other upper ranks had all been slain. Transfixed on his descendant, Kokushibo attempts to try and steer Michiru's bleeding, but then says that if Michiru died due to excess blood loss, or if he was rejected by Muzan, then that would be fate. Kokushibo tells Michiru that this would mean that he was a man and only meant to go so far. In the background, sneakily, Genya Shinazagawa attempts to sneak up on the demon as he shoots at him. He is left utterly shocked as Kokushibo instantly appears behind him and asks if he agrees with his statement, slicing off Genya's gun arm so fast that he wasn't even able to notice. As Genya's left arm falls to the ground, the boy looks in shock and attempts to defend himself, as Michiru is horrified and yells out to Genya. Before his hand is able to fully draw his blade, Kokushibo swiftly slices off his other arm as well. Leaving the boy bleeding profusely, he sees that Genya has been eating demons and slices his torso clean in half. Michiru was horrified at the sight and attempts to pull the blade out of himself, but in vain, as he is unable to make it budge. Kokushibo is surprised that Genya is still alive despite having his torso cut in half, and tells him that around 300 years ago, there was another swordsman who ate demons just like he did, saying that he had killed a particular swordsman by slicing his torso in half.
Kokushibo says that if the same strategy did not work on Genya, then perhaps the boy's weak point was actually his head. Genya tries to crawl towards his arms to attempt to reattach them, as Kokushibo says that he has no reason to allow a fake demon like him to live and begins to slice at his head. Suddenly, he is intercepted by Sanemi Shinazagawa, performing the wind-breathing fourth form Rising Dust Storm. As Genya is left shocked, Kokushibo immediately retreats backwards and recognizes Sanemi
As the wind his shearer, as the lady says that he is the wind that will rip off Kakushibo's head. Ganyu whispers to his brother, who roughly responds by calling Ganyu a pathetic little brother, telling him that the reason he went so far as to kill their own mother was that he wanted to protect Ganyu. Flashing back to a conversation he had with Tanjiro during his Shira training, Ganyu remembers that Tanjiro told him he could not smell a tinge of hatred in Sanemi towards Ganyu. And Tanjiro had told him that he did not need to be afraid of his brother because Sanemi had loved him that entire time. Sanemi continues and tells Ganyu that he should have lived a normal life until he reaped a ripe old age and attempted to make his wife and children happy, and returned for all the happiness that had been taken from them, their siblings, and their mother. As Sanemi tells him that he would have not let a single demon get near Ganyu no matter what, Ganyu tears up and apologizes to his brother. Meanwhile, Kakushibo feels nostalgic upon seeing a pair of Demon Slayer brothers. Enraged, though, Sanemi curses at Kakushibo and lunges forward to attack as Kakushibo slices at him. Ducking and sliding between Kakushibo's legs, Sanemi catches the demon's foot and flips him over, launching a wind-breathing first form dust-wooled wind cutter at the upper rank without pause. Sanemi matches blades with Kakushibo, who finally draws his sword out for all to see, a grotesque blade with eyes and veins running down the side of its length, and Sanemi notes how disgusting the sight of it truly is. Sanemi and Kakushibo go blade to blade, and the upper moon unleashes a moon-breathing fifth form moon spirit calamitous eddy that the wind Hashira manages to dodge. Noting that Kakushibo is able to repeat his slashes without even moving his blade, Sanemi prepares to counterattack. Dashing forward, Sanemi performs a wind-breathing third form Clean Storm Wind Tree and clashes with Kakushibo, but is unable to damage the upper rank. Unimpressed, Kakushibo lauds Sanemi's physical capabilities and notes that they are at their peak as the Hashira is silently awestruck at the demon's own prowess. Analyzing Kakushibo's attacks and seeing that each slash is accompanied by smaller, crescent-shaped blades that change their size randomly over time, Sanemi thinks to himself that he is not surprised Muchiro lost to this demon. Thinking that if it was not for his inexperience, he would surely have been able to cut him down by now, Sanemi gets excited at Kakushibo's skill and the fact that he is a demon using breaths. Seeing that this makes him a much tougher opponent, Sanemi is thrilled and calls Kakushibo a demon worth killing. Launching a wind-breathing second form, Claws Purifying Wind, Sanemi leaps forward. As Kakushibo deflects Sanemi's attack, he looks up and sees the wind Hashira about to slice down at him and blocks the blow. Suddenly, Sanemi goes straight for Kakushibo's neck with Genya's sword, maneuvering the blade with his right foot. Genya looks on in shock at this move, as the upper moon narrowly evades. The two continue to battle, with Sanemi matching Kakushibo blow for blow, much to the demon's delight. The intense combat begins to take its toll on Sanemi, however, as the wind Hashira finally slips up and narrowly messes up the tip of his swin, missing death by a small margin. Genya looks on with his eyes widening and concerned, and Muchiro calls out to Sanemi, who is frustrated but all right. Kakushibo reminisces over old battles and thinks back to a fight he had with a previous wind Hashira back in the Sengoku era, and how both of them had improved their swordsmanship by fighting in a similar manner. Suddenly, launching a moon-breathing sixth form, Perpetual Night, Lonely Moon, Kakushibo manages to slice Sanemi's chest and even cuts off all of the surrounding pillars in the room with his attack. Genya calls out to Sanemi, frustrated as the rubble blocks his view, leaving him unable to see his brother.
With blood spilling from his chest, Sanemi stands up straight and finds slashes running alongside his torso. Kakushibo praises Sanemi's skill for having kept up with him for so long, but tells him that if he moves now, his organs would spill out. Suddenly, he tenses up as his pulse begins to race, and he is puzzled at the sudden change. He begins to cuckle as he sees that the effect of his rear blood even began to work on an upper rank. With a smirk, he lashes forward and attacks Kakushibo, taunting the demon for staggering as he gloats that his rear blood made demons go drunk off the smell of it as he begins to counterattack in earnest. The Wind Hashira recounts how he first learned about the special quality of his blood and thinks back to the night his mother became a demon. He noted that her movements had become duller after his blood had spilled and surmised that she had gotten drunk off the smell of it. Afterwards, he began to hunt demons all on his own, being unaware of the Demon Slayer core or Nintrian swords. Instead, he relied on his own blood to disorientate the demons, enough for him to restrain them and then quickly burn them in the sun. The nights were difficult for him as he had become partially blind after killing his mother. Afterwards, he realized that this had been an incredibly reckless endeavor that he had tried doing, and he had been incredibly lucky to actually have gotten through it unscathed. One day, while hunting for a demon, Sanemi ran into a demon slayer named Musachika Kumino, who was also hunting the same demon. This is where Sanemi learned the actual existence of the Demon Slayer core and would join them afterwards. They became friends and even fought and defeated lower rank 1 while working together. However, Musachika was fatally wounded in the fight against the lower rank and ended up dying, leaving only Sanemi to become a shearer as a result of their win. Back in the fight against Kakushibo, Sanemi unleashes a wind-breathing 6th form Black Wind Mountain Mist, which the upper rank narrowly dodges. Shocked to see Sanemi being able to fight, Kakushibo guesses that the shearer is squeezing his muscles to prevent his organs from spilling out and solidifying his blood with his breaths to stem his bleeding. Impressed at the shearer's immense skill, Kakushibo notes that this is a feat no ordinary human could achieve and begins trading blows with Sanemi. The Wind Hashira keeps pushing Kakushibo back, but the demon suddenly stomped down on his blade, preventing him from moving it, and then attempts to behead Sanemi. Flashing back to when he first became a shearer, still raw from his sadness over the death of Musachika, Sanemi recalls his shearer meeting. When they had first laid eyes on Kugaya Ubiyashiki, Sanemi had boiled with rage at seeing someone who was smiling while people were suffering at the hands of demons, curling verbal abuse at Oyokata and saying he only saw the demon slayers as pawns. Sanemi had immediately earned the ire of his fellow shearer with his disrespect. Kyumi reproached him, but Kugaya assured the shearer it was all right before things could escalate further, and then addressed Sanemi directly. Kugaya told Sanemi that he had wished to fight with a blade himself as well, but was never able to do more than 10 swings before his pulse went wild and he would have to stop. He continued and said that if the demon slayers were pawns, then he was nothing more than a pawn who moved them around as well. Kugaya continued his response to Sanemi's words and told the Wind Hashira that even if he died, nothing would change, as he had already had successes. Oyokata said that since this was Sanemi's first Shira meeting and that he probably just had a misunderstanding, to treat him however he wished and just to focus on protecting people's lives as a Shira. Kugaya continued and said that it was his fault for calling Sanemi so soon after Musachika had died, as they had been as close as brothers. Sanemi was dumbfounded to hear that, and the Oyokata knew Musachika's actual name. After this, Kane Kocho told him that Kugaya had actually memorized all of the names of every single demon slayer and their upbringings since he had taken over as the leader. Having been shocked to hear so, Sanemi had looked in awe as Kugaya had gotten up and informed them of Musachika's will, saying that the will of most demon slayers would be similar. Kugaya had handed over Musachika's will to Sanemi, and the boy tearfully read it, and it told him that the demon slayers would always want their loved ones to live with a smile and not die unnatural deaths at the hands of demons. Remembering these moments, Sanemi pulls out a pistol and blocks Kakushibo's blade with the underside of it before firing straight at the demon's face. Kugashibo defiantly blocks the bullets with his blade and then unleashes a moon-breathing third form, Lonesome Moon Chains. Tsunemi vanishes from the range of the attack, and Kugashibo exasperatedly says that the demon slayers just keep on coming as he sees Gyomei standing in front of him. As the stone Hashira declares that the demon slayers have permanent until every last demon slayer is exterminated from the world, Gyomei tells Tsunemi to stitch up a stomach wound and that he would distract the demon to allow him to do so. Tsunemi agrees to this and apologizes for getting into such a state to begin with. As the stone Hashira steps in to fight the upper rank, the demon notes with excitement that Gyomei has refined his body to its utmost limits, saying that he hadn't seen a warrior with this strength in 300 years. Gyomei continues swinging his flail and inhaling deeply the whole time, while Kukushibo notes that the air is being drawn towards him.
Finally attacking Kukushiba with his weapon, Gyom looks on as the upper rank dodges his attack, but he quickly throws his axe at the demon as well. Kukushiba, who had been about to attack Gyom, is forced to abandon this idea and evade the axe as well. He attempts to attack again, but Gyom unleashes a stone-breathing second form, Upper Smash. As Kukushiba evades this attack, Gyom catches him in his chains. Restrained, Kukushiba attempts to break free, but isn't capable of damaging Gyom's chains. The stone Hashira attempts to cut off Kukushiba's head with his axe, but the demon dodges, only losing a lock of hair that is severed. Kukushiba is enraged and charges at Gyom, attempting to slice off his neck, but thought Hashira jumps out of the way at the last second, flinging his axe at the upper rank, but only managing to tear off some of his robe. Continuing his assault, Gyom swings his flail at Kukushiba as the demon evades yet again. However, Gyom manages to catch Kukushiba's blade between his chains and pulls on them, shattering the blade, and the two face off with a stone-breathing fourth form Volcanic Rock Rapid Conquest and a moon-breathing second form Pole Flowers Moon Gazing. As Kukushiba's blade finally recovers from the blow it received, he taunts Gyom by saying that no matter what damage he receives, it will all recover. In response, Gyom utilizes a technique he had been saving up for the battle with Muzan Kabutsuji, finally revealing his Demon Slayer mark. Inosuke and Kano run through the Infinity Castle, not knowing that just around the corner from them are Zenitsu and Murata. Back at the battle against Kukushiba, Machiro struggles to dislodge himself from where he had been pinned by the upper rank. Slowly dragging the blade out of his body with his remaining hand, Machiro manages to extract his blade and kneels over in pain. Once successful, he stems his bleeding and assesses his situation, noting that he would not be of much use with his current injuries and that he would take some time to be able to stop his bleeding, as he had not been blessed with the same physique as someone like Tengen Uzui. Determined to do something no matter the cost, though, Machiro resolved to do his best to defeat Kukushiba and aid those who are still fighting. As he grabs his blade and begins to run over to the fight, Machiro is distracted by Genya calling out to him to get some of the hair that had been cut off from Kukushiba so that he could eat it and recover, as he wanted to fight till the end to be able to help his brother Sanami. Meanwhile, Kukushiba and Gyom face off. The demon notices Gyom's Demon Slayer mark and says it is a pity. Noting that Gyom looked to be at least 27 years of age, he then reveals that all those who had gotten Demon Slayer marks had died before they had become 25. Predicting that Gyom would die that same night, Kukushiba says that everything Gyom had worked for up to this point would all go to waste and asks Gyom if he does not find that regrettable. Silently enraged at these words, Gyom tells Kukushiba that he and the other Demon Slayers had been aware of the story about those with marks all dying before reaching 25, asking what there was to regret about his life at their point. Gyom declares that no one could become a Hashira with such a half-hearted resolution, and declares that Kukushiba's words are insults to him. Kukushiba attempts to explain his views more by saying that he meant the techniques and body Gyom had worked to hone over the years, and wonders why Gyom cannot understand this. The stoner Hashira responds that there is nothing to understand, and that humans understood their dignity was best preserved by living and dying just as human beings. He rebukes Kukushiba further and tells him to not force his pathetic worldview on others and call it the supreme one. Continuing on, Gyom says that he had noticed Kukushiba had lied when saying no one with a Demon Slayer mark had lived past 25. Kukushiba attempts to deny this, though, but is cut off by Gyom saying that there must have been one exception, and Kukushiba suddenly jolts with an understanding and remembrance. Satisfied by this reaction, Gyom deduces that his theory was correct just as Kukushiba darts forward towards the stoner Hashira to slice at him, but Gyom is able to block. As the two trade blows, Sanami recovers from his wounds after having been stitched up, having also acquired a Demon Slayer mark. He wastes no time in attacking Kukushiba in tandem with Gyom, and the demon thinks that all the Hashira of the current time are marked with the Demon Slayer marks. As the two Hashira continue attacking in sync, the demon is surprised at their skilled coordination, while the both of them say that they are grateful for the fact that they trained together in the Hashira training to allow such coordination. Muchiro checks up on Genya and feeds him a fistful of hair from Kukushiba, which instantly heals his wounds.
As he begins to become more aware of the surroundings, Genya marvels at this new speed of recovery and remembers that he still has a fragment of Kugishiba's blade he can aid to gain further strength, and is comforted by this knowledge. Suddenly, Muzan Kabutsuji's voice echoes through Genya's head as he asks Kugishiba how many pillars he has defeated, before ordering him to not let any of them pass. Genya is further impressed at the concentration of the blood that Kugishiba possesses, as they later continue to battle with Giome and Tsunami. Kugishiba knows that the pair of them must be among the stronger fighters and is especially impressed with Giome. He sees that Giome's weapons allow him to overcome his blindness. By swinging the chains, it creates an echo that allows Giome to judge the distance and his surroundings by only using sound. Kugishiba declares that his best course of action would be to shatter Tsunami's blade by striking it from the side and attempts to do exactly that. However, Tsunami is able to react and rotate his blade. He also forces Kugishiba's blade down onto the ground before launching an attack right at him in tandem with Giome. The upper rank is impressed as Tsunami slices off more locks of his hair, and that his reflexes have actually improved since he was first wounded by the demon. Giome cuts in close and locks off Kugishiba's left ear with his axe before Tsunami performs a wind-breathing first form Dust Whirlwind Cutter that the upper rank is able to dodge. Working together, Giome and Tsunami unleash a stone-breathing first form Serpentite Bipolar and wind-breathing seventh form Gale's Sudden Gusts, respectively. However, it is revealed that they are only able to rip Kugishiba's kimono, and the demon rips it off entirely before proceeding to attack the two pillars from afar. They are left shocked by this new range and see that his sword has extended and more blades have suddenly branched out from it. Kugishiba declares that if he is able to defeat Giome and Tsunami, then defeating everyone else will be quite easy. Suddenly, Shinizugawa is hit by Kugishiba's attack and loses the index and middle finger of his right hand. Cursing his inability to react to the demon's strike, Tsunami knows that if it were not for Giome using his chain to divert the trajectory of the attack, he would have lost both of his arms. He also sees that the smell of his rare blood was beginning to lose its effect on Kugishiba, realizing that he may quickly become a burden. A crow flies overhead, and Kuina Ubuyashiki asks Karaya if they should send over either Giyu or Tanjiro to assist the Demon Slayers in defeating Upper Rank 1. However, Karaya is firm in his beliefs that Kugishiba and Tsunami, Muchiro, and Genya could defeat the demon and orders for Giyu and Tanjiro to continue onwards to Muzan. Back in the battle, Kugishiba unleashes a moon-breathing seventh form Mirror of Misfortune Moonlet that sends shockwaves at the Demon Slayers from afar. Giome is taken aback at the range of the attack, and Kugishiba continues to hammer away at the Hashira, this time with a moon-breathing 8th form Moondragon Ringtail that catches Tsunami's ankle and causes bleeding. Tsunami is frustrated at his inability to get in close to the demon's head, having to use all of his skill to just simply dodge his attacks. As the demon lines up another attack, he performs a moon-breathing 9th form Waning Moon Swaths. Kugishiba causes yet more damage to Tsunami, slashing his back with the attack. Giome yells out to Tsunami, but the Wind Hashira says to forget about him, as Kugishiba attempts to finish him off with a moon-breathing 10th form, drilling slashes moon through bamboo leaves. But Muchiro saves Tsunami. He says that he would not let Tsunami die, that he was capable of wielding his blade with both of his hands. Meanwhile, Genya looks on from behind a pillar, frozen in fear that he would simply be effortlessly dispatched by Kugishiba again. Hazing his weakness but still determined to keep his brother alive and help his friends, Genya stays rooted to one spot, neither making their move to attack Kugishiba nor retreating. He suddenly remembers Tanjiro's words that it was the weakest who had the most potential. When he explained how he had been able to turn the tide against Daki and Gyutaro, he told Genya that after a certain number of combatants, people would always prioritize the strongest, and thus their guard would be thinner against the perceived weaker opponents. Resolving to do his best, Genya takes out a shred of Kugishiba's blade ready to swallow it and do his best to defeat the upper rank demon. Omeya attempts to perform stone-breathing 5th form Arcs of Justice at Kugishiba but is interrupted by the latter's moon-breathing 6th form Moonbow Half Moon. The Stone Hashira is frustrated at the upper rank's never-ending techniques and senses
how the demon is too quick, picking him off exactly as he tries to fire a technique at him. Pondering over what it could be that the demon is seeing, Kumeya attempts to focus and refine his senses, saying that demons are mere transfigurations of the human form, and anything they could do, a human could manage as well. Saying that his eyes could see human nature, Kumeya declares that he would not be misled. Kokushibo unleashes another attack for a split second. Kumeya, to his own shock, is able to see through him and discern his pulse. Over with Machuero, though, he attempts to get in close to Kokushibo and slow him down so that he can create an opening for Kumeya or Tsunimi to cut off the demon's head. Kumeya notices this and coordinates with Tsunimi to match Machuero's run and distract Kokushibo from 3 sides, adjusting to Machuero's plan on the fly. Kokushibo sees this as an opportunity to defeat all of them at once and unleashes a moon-breathing 4/10th form Catastrophe 10-man crescent moon at all the Hashiras. All three manage to dodge his attacks, however, and Gumeya flings a Juzu bead right into the back of Kokoshiba's right hand, shocking the demon just enough to halt his attacks and allow the Hashiras to launch their counteroffensive. Tsunemi attacks Kokoshibo, forcing him back, and Gumeya cleaves off the demon's right shoulder along with his right arm, and Machuero finishes off the strike vector of attacks by stabbing Kokoshibo claimed through the abdomen. Kokoshibo wonders how Machuero had been able to dodge all of his attacks while he was wounded, deducing that this would only be possible if the child was also capable of entering the transparent world. Kokoshibo acknowledges that Gumeya had also been able to achieve such a stake in the middle of their fight, and had also taken his own eyes into account by manipulating his blood flow to throw off Kokoshibo's attacks. Undeterred, since the demon says, had been unable to sever his neck despite their cleaving maneuver, Kokoshibo plans on analyzing their attacks to develop a counterattack and render them demoralized. Gumeya and Tsunemi charge at him, and Kokoshibo prepares to unleash another 16th form as Genya, looking demonic, steps out from behind Hashira and aims his transformed gun at the other rank. He remembers Machuero's advice to not hesitate and says to himself that as long as he is able to slow down the demon, he is willing to go down with him. Genya fires his gun, but Kokoshibo quickly diverts his attack to block the bullets. However, Genya's bullets rebound off of Kokoshiba's blade, but swerve back to attack him on their own. Shocked at this, Kokoshiba looks up at Genya and sees that the boy and his gun have transformed, looking way more demonic than before. Suddenly, a large tree goes out of the back of Kokoshibo, rooting him to the ground. Seeing that these are blood demon art, Kokoshiba declares that Genya has absorbed the locks of his hair and broken bits of his sword to acquire demon powers. His attention is diverted quickly as Gumeya and Tsunemi lunge at him. This causes him to get anxious and fearful, and he thinks back to the last time that he had felt so threatened. There had been almost 400 years ago, back when he had faced his younger brother, Yuruishi Sugikuni. It had been the night of a blood moon, and Kokoshibo had encountered his younger brother, who should have been more than 80 years of age at the time. This was incredibly shocking to Kokoshibo, as he thought those with the Demon Slayer's marks did not live beyond the age of 25. Yurichi had begun to cry at the sight of his brother, and told him that it was heart-wrenching. Seeing his normally reserved and quiet brother showing some emotion had left Kokoshibo bewildered. However, this lasted for only an instant, as when Yurichi grabbed his blade, he let off such an aura that Kokoshibo was left stunned and afraid. As he charged, Yurichi was so quick he left a slice through brother's neck before he could even react. Seeing that his brother had lost none of his strength, Kokoshibo was enraged, and his old feelings of jealousy and hatred began to well up inside of it once more. Kokoshibo wanted to kill Yurichi, but knew that he would die with Yurichi's next attack. Even Muzan Kibutsi had been pushed to the brink when he faced Yurichi's skill. However, their next attack never came, as Yurichi died resting on his blade but still standing on his feet. Kokoshiba lets out a howl and emits crescent-shaped shockwaves from his body that slice at all of the Demon Slayers. The demon suddenly grows blades from his body, and the Demon Slayers are all pushed back, with Genya being vertically sliced in half, though Machuero stubbornly hangs on to his blade, still piercing Kokoshiba's torso. Gumeya and Tsunemi charge of Kokoshibo, and Machuero decides that he needs to do something to kill Kokoshibo so that the other pillars would be able to save as much of their strength for the fight against Muzan. Machuero's grip on his blade tightens, and it suddenly starts to turn red, much to both his and Kokoshiba's shock. The demon suddenly stiffens up in agony as the bright red blade sears his very cells. Taking advantage of the demon's newfound immobility, Tsunemi slices at his neck, and Genya activates a blood demon art from afar at the flesh bullet still inside Kokoshibo. It makes a tree grow out of his back. Kokoshibo attempts to swipe at Genya, but finds that he is unable to activate his technique, and Gumeya swipes at his head with his flail. Kokoshibo resists having his neck cleaved off, and Gumeya swipes at it from below with his axe. But Kokoshibo is able to keep it at bay with his blade somehow, noting that he is unable to activate his own blood demon art due to the tree using up so much of his own blood to grow itself. Kokoshiba looks at Machuero's blade again and is reminded of Yurishi's blade, thinking back to a conversation he had with his brother in the past. In that conversation, Kokoshibo had asked his brother what his plans of succession was, as he believed there was no one powerful enough to match them, and worried that their perfect breath techniques would fade from the world one day. But Yurishi had responded to this by saying that they were not as big of a deal as he was making them out to be, and that there would come a day where there were those who would surpass them. He continued and said that they could reach the end of their days feeling nothing but ease. Meanwhile, Sanemi had jumped and swung his blade down on Kumeya's flail to force it down and chop off Kokoshiba's neck. Suddenly, both the weapons turned bright red at the spots where they made contact with each other, and they finally mustered up enough strength to chop off Kokoshibo's neck and snap his blade in two. As this happens, the demon could only remember his brother's words of how their children born after them would surpass them and reach even further heights. Thinking back to the time he spoke with Yudichi about his confidence that their generation would be the golden age of a demon sayer court, Kokoshibo remembers how he had been disgusted at his response. He wonders what had been so funny about the future ahead of them, that there would be demon slayers who could surpass them. Kokoshibo acknowledges the strength and the talent of those who had been fighting him, noting how they had not let go of their blades despite their severe injuries, and the capabilities of using blood demon art despite being only human. Continuing on in spite of blood loss and even managing to turn their blades red though they were not sun-breathing users. Asking what had been so funny about being able to predict such a future is this. Kokoshibo says that the mere thought of losing made him seethe with anger. Resolving to not lose, he manages to stem the bleeding from the stump of his neck, much to the shock of Gumeya, who tells Tsunemi to keep attacking the demon to finally end him and not let the sacrifices of Genya and Muchiro be in vain. Tsunemi is fired up at those words and unleashes the wind-breathing 8th form, primary gale slash at Kokoshibo, as Gumeya follows it up with his stone-breathing 5th form, arcs of justice. The upper rank manages to dodge Gumeya's axe and slices off Machuero's sword hand. He attempts to pull out the boy's sword and also remove the stump Genya summoned on him. Kokoshibo's head slowly begins to regenerate as he continues to evade strikes from both Gumeya and Tsunemi. Much to their shock, he manages to fully regrow a new head, but is far more monstrous than what he had looked like before. Determined, the Hashira continue their onslaught to defeat the upper rank, and as Tsunemi charges at him, Kokoshibo sees the reflection of his new face in Tsunemi's blade, shocked and disgusted at the ugliness of his new form. The demon remembers the words of his brother from their childhood, where he resolved to become the strongest samurai in the country after his own brother. Reflecting on these memories, Kokoshibo wonders if this is the form of a samurai, and if this is truly what he had wanted. Suddenly, the spot near his stomach where he had been stabbed by Muchiro begins to crumble away on its own. In a split second that follows this, Kokoshibo is completely and utterly shocked. But Gumeya and Tsunemi manage to cleave off his new head, leaving him completely unable to use his blood demon art. Still unwilling to lose, though, Kokoshibo attempts to muster up more strength, but suddenly remembers the words of his brother from their final fights. Kokoshibo questions his motives and wonders if this is all that he had wanted from his life and deeds. Calling himself a disgrace to life, and acknowledges that all he ever wanted to do was be like his brother, Yorichi.
Kokoshibo remembers his past with his brother and says that those who do not envy others are merely lucky, as they have not encountered someone who was so strong and vivid that they scorched everything as if they were the sun. He thinks back to when they were born and says that during their time they were considered unlucky as twins cause succession disputes. Yurochi had been born with a mark on his forehead, which was considered hideous, and he thinks his father had ordered for him to be killed. However, upon hearing this news, their mother had been enraged at him, so it was decided that Yurochi would be sent off to a temple when he became 10 years old instead. The brothers were kept separated, and Kokoshibo, then Michikatsu, would often see Yurochi clinging to their mother's side, and he had found his brother to be pitiful and childish. Michikatsu would sneak to Yurochi's room when their father wasn't looking and even made him a flute. All they believed Yurochi was deaf, as he had never spoken a word until the age of 7. One day, while practicing sword swings in the garden, Michikatsu was chilled to the bone, noticing Yorochi staring at him silently from next to a tree. Suddenly, Yorochi spoke and asked him if his dream was to become the strongest samurai in the country. Michikatsu was so shocked he dropped his wooden sword, and Yorochi burst into a smile and said that he would become the second strongest samurai. However, Michikatsu was merely disgusted at his brother's lack of awareness, saying that a kid who ran with his mother every time he saw him could never become a samurai. Yorochi began to hang around Michikatsu's sword practices and asked to be taught their way as well. So Michikatsu's trainer gave him a small shinai. With basic instructions on how to hold the sword and a form stance, the trainer asked Yorochi to charge him. To Michikatsu's shock, Yorochi was able to shatter the trainer's wooden sword, flip him over, and knock him out unconscious in only 4 strikes. The trainer even grew swellings the size of fists in the spots where Yorochi had struck him. Yorochi lost his desire to become a samurai, as he disliked the feeling of hitting someone and felt horrible for it. Michikatsu was greatly intrigued at his brother's strength and tried to learn his secret. After much coaxing, Yorochi said that their opponent's lungs expanded, so they just had to closely watch their bone movement, muscle contraction, and blood flow. Michikatsu had difficulty following this, but was able to summarize that his brother could see through living things. He felt jealous that his brother had such an immaculate talent to fight with, but absolutely no desire to fight, as Yorochi told him that he would rather just fly a kite with his brother. Later on, Michikatsu realized that his position with Yorochi would become reversed, and he would be the one to live in the temple instead. However, that night, Yorochi came to him and told him that their mother had passed away, and that he would be running away from their home for good, saying that he would always cherish the flute his brother had made for him before running off. The next day, Michikatsu read their mother's diary and saw written in it that Yorochi had realized that he would become the heir, which is why he had decided to leave the house earlier than planned. He also learned that Yorochi was aware of their mother's illness and that she had been suffering pains in her left side for several years. Michikatsu made the connection between her illness and Yorochi's constant clinging to her mother's left side whenever he saw her, and realized that his brother had in fact been supporting their mother the entire time, crushing the page as he lost control of his jealousy. Thinking back to his past with Yorochi, Kukushiba remembers how he had begged for Yorochi to die as the justice of the world went amiss with his very existence. His father had sent envoys to the temple Yorochi was supposed to be at in the hopes of making his younger son his heir, but found that he had never arrived there, and so Michikatsu had inherited everything. For a decade afterwards, he lived in peace, even getting married and having a child. However, one day, his military encampment had been attacked by demons who slaughtered all his troops and were about to do him in as well, until a timely intervention from no one other than Yorochi. The moment he laid eyes on his brother again, Michikatsu's tranquil days came to an end as he saw how much stronger his brother had become, and his jealousy and anger was only stoked by the latter's good-natured apology for not being able to save his subordinates. Possessed by his jealousy, Michikatsu abandoned his family and joined the Demon Slayer court. He saw that Yorochi had begun to teach the Demon Slayers how to use sun-breathing and sword techniques. None were able to reach his level and perform them. However, he had to work around this limitation, instead focusing on the strengths of each individual and teaching them a breath style suited to them. More people began to grow marks like Yorochi had, and the power of the Demon Slayers increased, and even Michikatsu himself grew marked, which was the same as Yorochi's. Michikatsu was also unable to use sun-breathing and had to resort to using a derivative which he named moon-breathing, anguished at the fact that he was unable to catch up to his brother. Soon the marked demon slayers began dying in numbers as they learned that the mark shortened the lifespans in exchange for getting stronger, which signaled that the golden age of demon slayers would soon come to an end and that he himself had little time left to remain actually as well. It was with these thoughts in his head that Michikatsu came face to face with Muzan Kabatsuji, who offered to turn him into a demon, saying that with his nigh immortality, Michikatsu would be able to perfect his techniques as much as he pleased. Michikatsu accepted the offer and felt as if he had been freed from all of his obligations. This was fleeting, however, as when he once again faced his brother, Kukushibo was utterly outclassed, and he saw with his own eyes that his brother had transcended the world. Even Muzan had been unable to lay as much as a scratch on him, and Yorochi had died undefeated in his old age. Out of sheer hate, and once again coming up short against his brother, Kukushibo swiped at Yorochi's standing corpse with his blade, slicing it into several parts. However, there was one final surprise in store for him, and he saw that a bag fell out of Yorochi's robes, the one that contained the flute he had made for him when they were children. Seeing that his brother had still cherished their memories together, Kukushibo tears up, but is also frustrated at his brother's continued excellence. Kukushibo says that he had been unable to forget Yorochi's face throughout his entire life, despite wishing desperately that he would. He said that Yorochi had been like the sun and that people around him yearned for him and to be like him, but their only option had been to fail and vanish away. Recognizing that he hadn't been able to obtain anything, having abandoned everything he had to emulate his brother, and had even been unable to wipe out his breath style despite killing all those who knew its forms alongside Muzan. Kukushibo finally disintegrates away as he wonders why he had even been born, asking Yorochi this question as he finally faded away. Kukushibo disintegrates away, but Sanemi Shinazugawa continues to blindly charge at him, and Gyomei has to stop the Windashir, telling him that the fight is over. He is shocked to see that Sanemi is in fact unconscious and was attacking the upper rank in that actual state. Genya, still alive, looks on at this scene and weakly whispers Gyomei's name, and the Stonershir walks up to check on him and is shocked that the boy is still somehow alive. He deduces that it must be due to absorbing a demon, and Genya tells him to focus on treating Muchiro instead. The Stonershir heads over to Muchiro, who lies lifeless on the ground, staring straight above. The Stonershir closes his eyes and says that Muchiro had been valiant until the very end, and said that they owed their victory to the efforts of both Muchiro and Genya. Kyomei closes Muchiro's eyes shut and said that they would continue onwards to defeat Muzan. Muchiro opens his eyes in the afterlife and finds his brother Yuichiro Tokito standing in front of him with tears in his eyes, angrily telling him to go back. He begins to well up in Muchiro's eyes as he is hurt that his brother still does not praise him for all his efforts and asks why his brother is still bent on rejecting him. Yuichiro responds by asking why he works so hard instead of running away, and Muchiro says that it was because he could not abandon his friends, but Yuichiro is adamant and calls his brother's death a pointless one, asking if he even knew why he was born. Muchiro retorts that his brother had died when he was 11 and was more pitiful than himself, going on to say that he was born to be happy. Muchiro tells his brother how he had sad and painful moments ever since they had been left alone by the deaths of their family, but despite that he had managed to smile again. This was down to all the friends he had made and all the times he had shared with them. Muchiro says that he has no regrets, he hadn't run away from anything, and even laid his life down for his friends, and asks his brother to not call his death a pointless one, as coming from him, those words hurt more than they would otherwise. Yuichiro apologizes for his words and hugs his brother.
Meanwhile, Sanemi comes in and sees Genya disintegrating before his eyes. Horrified, he screams out, shocking Kyomei as Genya apologizes for being a burden and thanks him for protecting him. Sanemi says that he hadn't predicted him at all as he is dying right now despite all of his efforts, but Genya responds that his brother had tried his hardest and that he had done enough.
Genya says that he wants Sanemi to be happy as he knew his brother was the sweetest person in the entire world. Sanemi cries as Genya fully disintegrates, and Kyomei walks up behind him to remind him that it wasn't fully over until they defeat Muzan Kubutsuji. As word spreads of the deaths of Muchiro Tukido and Ginyu Shinzugawa, Tanjiro begins to cry, quickly attempting to compose himself, though he thinks of how everyone else had to keep their feelings in check and fought till the very end. Thinking back to the letter he received from Sanjuro, he'd revealed to him that there were in fact 13 forms of the Hinugami Kagura, one more than the 12 forms he currently knew. Resolving to do as best to defeat Muzan regardless, Tanjiro continues to run forward with Gyu. Meanwhile, Cardio realizes that they would be unable to make it to where Muzan was in time, and Tamio wouldn't be able to hold off the demon for much longer. As he learns that the first group of demon says have reached Muzan's location but the second troop also close, he immediately issues an order for the demon says to stand by and not approach Muzan, saying that they should further wait for the Hashira to arrive. As the first troop stands in front of the capsule of flesh Muzan is locked in along with Tamio, they see that they are unable to reach it as it is suspended over a steep fall into the depths of the Infinity Castle, being suspended in place by outgrowths of flesh from the capsule. One of the demon says suggests that they should slice at the outcroppings of flesh. He is interrupted, however, by Muzan bursting out of the capsule while they jump. The demon kills the entire first troop in mere seconds as Cardia reiterates his orders for the troop to maintain its distance as they would only serve as food for Muzan to recover. The crow's cries are wasted, however, as the entire troop has already been killed by Muzan, and he also strikes at the crow, beheading it in one stroke. He says that when one lives for 1,000 years, they lose the feeling of enjoying the taste of their food. But now that he was hungry, he found the taste of his victims to be incredibly delicious. He thanks Cardio Biashiki for unwittingly preparing this feast for him, and says that he was unaware of which of his children led the demon Sayer Corps now, but they were quite superb. Thinking that he might turn the new Oyakata into a demon to replace his now dead subordinates if they bow before him, a mouth on the palm of Muzan's hand finishes eating, and he holds up Tamio's severed head. Cardia orders the second troop to retreat at once to prevent Muzan from recovering any more of his strength by 18 more people. Meanwhile, Muzan gloats at Tamio and says that her medicine to cure demons and turn them back into humans had failed, as the woman responds that this would be the day where Muzan would finally go to hell. The demon flippantly responds that hundreds of people had said those same words to him before, but they had yet to come true. Tamio tells him to give back her husband and children, and Muzan coldly looks at her and says that in that case, she should go and join the family that she had killed, as he crushes her head in his hands. Elsewhere in the Infinity Castle, Yushido immediately falls to the ground while running as this happens, tearing up on the floor and gritting his teeth in rage at Tamio's death. Muzan swiftly makes short work of the second troop as well, slicing through them all in one move as Cardia orders for them to fall back, asking about Guy's whereabouts. Muzan says that not one of them was of use to him as he killed them, and declares that he will end the Demon Slayer corpse on this night, as he also smirks with an evil expression. Cardio Biashiki panics and regrets the great loss of life to all the Demon Slayers who had been slain by the newly reawoken Muzan, blaming himself for the failure. He begins to lose focus of what is around him and continues to fear that he has wasted years of effort by his predecessors and all the Demon Slayers who had given their lives in their fight against Muzan. Kanata, though, slaps him out of this, much to their sister Koniwaya's shock, and yells at him to keep himself together and issue his next orders as the battle was still ongoing. Realizing his father and forefathers had gone through all of the same pressure, Cardio recomposes himself and orders for his reinforcements to be sent to Muzan's location and to focus their power on one point to get rid of Muzan once and for all. Kanata heads back to her seat, and Cardia thanks both his sisters for being there to support him as they both tearfully accept his thanks. A crow announces to the other Demon Slayers that Muzan has been revived and passes on Cardia's orders for the other Hashira to gather immediately. Mitsuo is shocked to hear the news as Obanai curses the fact that he and Mitsuri are being held back by Nakime, while the others had already slain the upper rank even at the cost of Muchiro and Ginya's lives. Mitsuo is confused at the order they have received and wonders if that means that they should meet up with the other Hashira, and leaves Nakime alone. Suddenly, she is whisked away by the hem of her cloak by someone as Nakime plays her biwa again. Meanwhile, Muzan, who is standing amidst the corpses of all the Demon Slayers he had killed, is suddenly teleported into a large room with Tanjiro and Gyu joining him. Tanjiro is shocked to see the demon, and his mind floods with the memories of his family's murder, Nezuko as a demon, and all of his fallen comrades. Enraged, he grips his sword tightly and looks fiercely at Muzan, but Gyu tells him to calm himself. Muzan begins to speak to them again, saying that all of them are persistent, and he sickens it to the bottom of his heart. Continuing on, the demon says that the Demon Slayers always talk about avenging their families or friends, believing that instead they should just be thankful for the fact that they had not died and simply go back to the way that they used to live their lives. Tanjiro is shocked at these words and asks Muzan what he is saying as the demon compares himself to a natural disaster, saying that no one sought vengeance on earthquakes or storms when they killed people, concluding that the deed could not be brought back to life and that they should all just go back to earning their daily wages. He says that most humans do that, and the only reason the Demon Slayers did not do the same is because they were a bunch of deviants and he was sick of dealing with deviants. Muzan says that he is the only one who truly wanted this state of affairs to come to an end as Tanjiro comes to a boiling point and says with a calm, seething rage that Muzan was a being that should not be allowed to exist. As Tanjiro stares down Muzan, the young Demon Slayer notes to himself that this is the first time he has ever felt such sheer rage at any living being, knowing that the Demon Lord will not be defeated by simply cutting off his head and that they will have to drag him out into the sun to truly be rid of him for good. Aiming to stall Muzan and buy enough time for the other Demon Slayers to join him, Tanjiro resolves to get any information that could prove useful out of the skirmish to tell the others and make the task easier for all of them. Muzan suddenly swings his tubes at both Tanjiro and Gyu, but the Demon Slayers are able to dodge the attack. Muzan gazes at his attack, taking in his new form's powers, and then unleashes even more ferocious attacks at the Demon Slayers. Gyu just barely blocks the attack where they would have breathing 11th form dead calm, and the water Hashira notes the speed of the attacks and also that the tubes are as sharp as swords. Tanjiro was entirely unable to keep up with the attacks and dodges them on pure instinct, but still attempts to get through the tubes closer to Muzan. He manages to do so, but before he is able to attack Muzan, the demon slices at him and manages to cut his eye. Gyu comes in close to scoop Tanjiro on the way from Muzan, warning the boy not to get too close, saying that Muzan is far stronger than an upper rank and that it is best to keep our distance as beheading Muzan will have no effect. Muzan asks if 3 Hashira are rarely enough to accomplish this task. The Count takes Gyu and Tanjiro by surprise as Muzan continues on, saying that Obanai and Mitsuri had already been killed by his subordinate Nakime, as he had seen through her eyes. The Demon Slayers dodge another wave of attacks from Muzan, and Tanjiro urges himself not to become a burden now that he has lost an eye. Attempting to use his smell to keep up, Tanjiro is shocked as he finds that Muzan's attacks are so fast he is unable to even smell them. Finding himself unable to keep up his breaths, Tanjiro's new blind spot gives him a harsh reminder of his existence as he smacks into a wall on his right side. Gyu calls out to the boy as Muzan launches attacks his way. Suddenly, Mitsuri bursts into the scene by breaking through the wall behind Muzan, and the demon and Gyu look on in shock at the fact that she is still alive. Unleashing a love-breathing 6th form cat-legged winds of love, Mitsuri looks on dumbfounded as Muzan shrugs off the attack with ease and doesn't even take a scratch from it. While this happens, Obanai picks up Tanjiro and orders him to fall back instead of being a burden.
Tanjiro is grateful that Obanai and Mitsuri are still alive. Obanai does a double take in shock, telling Tanjiro to worry about himself first. Moving on, Muzan wonders how the 2 Hashira he had seen to be dead could still be alive. He yells in Akame's name, asking what is going on, and Yushiro responds to him, saying that he is controlling her right now. The castle begins to shake violently as Yushiro yells with tears in his eyes, and Muzan had committed the gravest sin in the world by killing Tamiyo, and declares that he will wipe the Demon Lord from the face of the world. The Hashira battle Muzan, but the site of their battle repeatedly changes within the Infinity Castle, and Mitsuri begins to get dizzy. Muzan snarls at them, and they love Hashira cows in fear, wishing for Yushiro to arrive and aid them, saying that Yushiro's plan to have them pretend to be dead was now in shambles, and that Gyu and Tanjiro were in greater danger than they had realized. Flashing back to Yushiro explaining his plan to her, Mitsuri recalled how the demon told her to cooperate with him if she wasn't an idiot. She said to herself that she wasn't one, agreed, and Yushiro told her to distract Nakime so that he would be able to sneak up behind her and take control of her mind to show her a false vision to feed Muzan of all of the Hashira being dead so that they would be able to storm him at once with him being caught unawares. Mitsuri is amazed at this ability of his and tells him so. Back at the battle with Muzan, the landscape continues to rapidly change as the Demon Lord identifies that Yushiro is controlling Nakime. He attempts to wrestle back control of Nakime's mind from Yushiro and manages to weaken the young demon's hold, even beginning to spread his cells to Yushiro's hands. A demon slayer next to Yushiro offers to be eaten by the demon to strengthen him and give him a better chance against Muzan, but Yushiro fastly rejects this notion. Muzan's attention is suddenly brought back to the battlefield as Gyu and Obaguro attack him with water-breathing 4th form, striking tide and serpent-breathing 1st form, winding serpent / respectively. Yushiro begins to fight back while Muzan is distracted and manages to have Nakime change the battlefield again, leaving Muzan and the Hashira falling. As he falls, Muzan reaches forward and clinches his fist, destroying Nakime's skull. Sensing that the castle will soon collapse, Yushiro attempts to transport all of the demon slayers out of the castle before it is destroyed. The floor reappears beneath them all again as the demon slayers continue to fight against Muzan and dodge his attacks. Tanjiro gets hit by one of the attacks and his right shoulder begins bleeding. The castle begins to creak and Open Eye senses that it will soon be destroyed, noting that if that happens, then only Muzan would survive. As Misery notices that they are all being pushed upwards, Muzan launches an attack at her, taking her completely by surprise. Tanjiro rushes forward though to intervene and swings his blade, flinging a demon slayer's broken sword straight into Muzan's head, taking the demon by surprise and infuriating him further. The castle finally stops moving as it bursts through the ground to the outside, flinging them all to the surface.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss any future uploads. Drop your thoughts or questions in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned for more awesome content, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.